Jai Shrimati Ji. Srimad Devi Bhagavath. If you want to know who Adi Shakti is, read Devi Bhagavath, said by Her Holiness Srimati Ji Nirmala Devi.
Sankalpam. Mama Atmanaha Sahajayogi Kutumbanam Atmonnati Prityartham Moksha Prapti Prityartham Sakshat Shri Adi Shakti Mataji Shri Nirmala Devyai Pujanam Karishe. The Holy Recital of Srimad Devi Bhagavath.
Introduction. The greatness of Devi Bhagavath. Ved Vyas was an Ansh avatar, that is, partial incarnation of Shri Vishnu, and was born to Parasar and Satyavati. He divided the Vedas into 4 parts and taught it to his Shishyas, that is, disciples. But he knew the common man would not be able to understand it, and this troubled him. So he wrote in simple language the 18 Puranas. He also wrote the Mahabharata. And last of all, he wrote the book which gives divine knowledge as well as mukti, the Srimad Devi Bhagavath. In all past yugas, there were various dharmas. But for Kali Yuga, worship of Adya Shakti is the only means of salvation. Bhagavan Vyas has written this book as a Purana, explaining all the ways in which we can obtain and absorb the nectar flowing from the lotus feet of the Devi. Whoever listens with devotion and attention to Devi Bhagavath will always have Siddhi in his vicinity. The first person to benefit was Raja Parikshit, who was bitten by the snake Takshak. His son Janmejaya went to Ved Vyas and listened first hand to Devi Bhagavath in 9 days from Ved Vyas's own Vani, voice. Thus, he earned for his father a place at Devi Bhagavati's lotus feet and arrived there as a Deva. There are no strict rules of months or days. But if we listen to this Devi Bhagavath during Navratri, we get the benefit of Navaha Yagya. This is available even to sinners, fools, traitors, disbelievers, and Nastics, and those who did not get fruits from their various sacrifices and rituals. In other words, Devi Bhagavath is the ultimate Purana. It should be treated with utmost respect and always given a special seat in the house. When Sri Krishna went in search of Prasen and did not return for a long time, his father Vasudev listened to Devi Bhagavath and got his beloved son back. Whichever house installs Devi Bhagavath with due respect and honor, that house becomes like a Tirth Sthan, holy shrine, and evil forces cannot survive near it. The assembly of rishis thus spoke to Sootji, the narrator. Sootji, you are very wise. You received your education from Sri Ved Vyas. May you live long. We have already listened with great bhakti to your gracious voice. Now we desire to hear that which is most sacred of all, the Devi Puran. Sootji replied, You are very blessed that you have asked for something which will be beneficial to the whole world. The rishis asked, Please tell us how Vasudev was blessed with a son. Also, the story of the Syamantaka gem and how Vasudev got help by listening to Srimad Devi Bhagavath. Sootji thus narrated, Satyajit, a king of the Bhojvanshi clan, lived in Dwaraka. He worshipped the sun god and was given as a gift of appreciation the Syamantaka gem. When he wore this and came to Dwaraka, everyone thought it was the sun god himself. But Sri Krishna explained that it was the gem which shone. One day, the king's brother, Prasen, wore the gem and went hunting. A lion killed him and took away the gem. Just then, a warrior king, Jambavan, saw the gem. He killed the lion and took the gem away. He gave it to his son to play. When Prasen did not return, the king began to wonder where he was and whether someone had harmed him for the sake of the gem. Suddenly, Rumor started in Dwaraka that Sri Krishna had been attracted to the gem and must have killed Prasen for it. Hearing this false accusation, Sri Krishna went to the forest himself to look for it. He found Jambavan and engaged him in war for 27 days. When the news of Sri Krishna's disappearance into Jambavan's den reached Vasudev, he sank into deep sorrow. At this stage, Sri Narad appeared and after hearing the cause of the sorrow, advised Vasudev to do Aradhana, worship of Ambika Devi. Vasudev asked him, Dev Rishi, who is Devi Ambika? What is her description and how does one do Aradhana? Please tell me. Narad said, who can adequately describe the great Devi? I will endeavour to give a concise description. Bhagavati Ambika is eternal. She is the embodiment of Sat, Chit, Anand, that is, truth, consciousness, bliss. She is primordial. She is above all. She is the cause of this living universe. It is only with her permission and blessings that Brahmadeva is able to carry out creation. It was after performing stutis to the Devi that Brahma overcame his fear of Madhu and Kaitabh. It is only by her grace that Sri Vishnu preserves the creation. Also, it was only after her benevolent glance fell on Rudra that he got the powers of dissolution. It is she who covers the universe with illusion, and it is only she who grants mukti, moksha pradayini. She is the embodiment of supreme knowledge, Nirmal Vidya. She presides over the brave and the strong, Veera Mata, and the competent who can lead the battle against negative forces. You must perform Navratra Puja and in 9 days you must listen to Devi Bhagavath. On completion, your son will return. Those who read or listen to Devi Bhagavath get the blessings of worldly enjoyment with detachment and liberation. Then Vasudev remembered the same advice that was given to him when Kamsa had imprisoned him and his wife Devaki and had killed 6 of their sons. He told Narad, I saw that Devaki had reached the end of her endurance, so I called Muni Garg to the prison and asked him to advise a way to save the life of the 7th child. He praised Sri Bhagavati Durga, who grants protection to devotees who seek her help, and advised the reading of Devi Bhagavath. At this, both Devaki and I sank into despair. We were prisoners and had no access to such a ritual. So we pleaded with Muni Garg to perform it on our behalf. He graciously agreed and, taking some Brahmins with him, proceeded to the Vindhya mountains. There, they made necessary preparations and started chanting and reading the praises of Devi Jagadamba. On completion, there was a voice from heaven, Akashavani. Munis, I am Prasanna. Your prayer will be granted. To remove the oppression of the world, I have commanded Sri Vishnu to incarnate as a child in Devaki's womb. As soon as the child is born, Vasudev should carry it to Nandaji in Gokul. He will bring back Yashoda's girl child and give it to Kamsa. Kamsa will throw her to the ground to kill her, but she will slip out of his hands and assume a divine form of Vishnu Maya and live in the Vindhya mountains for the benefit of humanity. Muni Garg offered obeisance to the Devi and humbly thanked her. Then Vasudev thanked Narad for his advice and pleaded with him to do the great honor of himself reading Devi Bhagavath for him. Sage Narad graciously agreed and at an auspicious time and day started the reading. Lots of Brahmins also arrived to participate. All this while the war was still going on between Jambavan and Sri Krishna. Jambavan was wounded and realizing that he was fighting none other than Sri Krishna, he prostrated before him and begged forgiveness. He then gave the gem to Sri Krishna and also gave his daughter Jambavati in marriage to the Lord. Sri Krishna returned to Dwaraka just as the reading of Devi Bhagavath concluded. Vasudev and all the congregated people of Dwaraka were overjoyed. The Brahmins were given the traditional farewell of food and gifts and were pleased. Sage Narad took leave and left for Brahmalok. Whoever reads this with clean attention and nirmal bhakti will be blessed with fulfillment and peace. Then Sootji said, O Munis, now listen to another story where the reading of Devi Bhagavath granted a prayer. Once, sage Agastya and his wife Lopamudra went to Kartikeya and requested him, O slayer of Tarakasura, please narrate to us those incidents where the glories of the Mother of the Universe, the eternal Bhagavati Devi, have been sung in the form of Devi Bhagavath. Sri Kartikeya said, Who can ever justly or completely describe the eternal Devi whose nature is generosity, upon whose meditation one gets Satchit Anand, and who resides in the form of Jagadamba in the Devi Bhagavath, and who gives auspiciousness even to the elements of the place where it is read or heard. Shraddhadev was the son of Vivaswan. He had no children, and so he performed a Putroshti Yagya presided over by sage Agastya. The wife of Shraddhadev requested the Brahmin to arrange that she should bear a girl child. When the girl was born, the father questioned sage Agastya as to why Yagya produced a girl instead of a boy. In meditation, sage Agastya came to know the truth, and he did penance to Sri Vishnu and got the boon which changed the girl Ila into a boy Sudyumna. When he grew into a youth, he mounted a horse and went to hunt in the forest. He strayed into an area which had been cursed by Sri Shiva, that any male who entered would become a female. Instantly, Sudyumna and all his entourage became women, and even his horse became a mare. Now, this girl wandered near the ashram of sage Buddh, and he married her. She stayed in his ashram, and they had a son, Pururav. One day, the memory of being the boy Sudyumna revived, and this girl became sad. She went to the ashram of Guru Vashisht and told him her story, and expressed the desire to become Sudyumna again. Guru Vasisht went to Kailash and began penance. Praising Sri Shiva, Guru Vasisht said, O Devadidev, bestower of blessings and auspiciousness, having matted hair and the moon for his crest jewel, obeisance to you again and again. O well-wisher of the universe, who resides on Mount Kailash, Namastasye, Namastasye. O field of forgiveness, God with a blue throat, who grants boons and is the support of all living beings, accept my pranams. Hearing these praises, Sri Shiva appeared before the Guru, seated on the sacred bull Nandi. Also seated was Sri Parvati. Their countenance was as bright as 1,000 suns and as white as the snow-clad mountain. He had 3 eyes and the crescent moon on his hair. He was pleased and told Guru Vashisht to ask for a boon. When he requested the Lord to restore Ila to the male form of Sudyumna, the Lord said, He will be a male for 1 month and a female for 1 month, and so on. Guru Vasisht paid obeisance to Jagat Janani Bhagavati Parvati, whose darshan seldom goes unrewarded. Her face has the radiance of 1,000 moons, and she is ever smiling. To obtain the boon of permanent manhood for Ila, he began singing the praises of the Divine Mother. O Mother, who has benevolence for her bhaktas, praise be to you. You who are attributeless and beyond the gunas, praise be to you. Protector of those who surrender to you, praise be to you again and again, barambar. Remover of sorrow and destroyer of negative forces, Sri Durga, praise be to you. You who give darshan to your devotees, O Mahamaya, worship of your lotus feet takes one across the ocean of illusion. You who grant bliss, moksha and liberation, be pleased. Who can adequately describe you? I am only bowing to you in worship. Sri Durga is also Narayani, and she was instantly pleased. The all-knowing and wish-fulfilling goddess spoke thus to Guru Vasishtha. Go to Sudyumna's house and worship me with dedication and devotion. You read to him the Devi Bhagavath in 9 days. That Purana is very dear to me. As soon as the reading is complete, he will get the boon of becoming a male permanently. Then, Sri Shiva and Sri Parvati withdrew from his sight. After paying homage, Guru Vasishtha returned to his ashram. He called Ila and narrated the events. Then he made the necessary preparations and started the reading of Srimad Devi Bhagavath with great Shraddha, faith and reverence. On the 9th day, Ila became Sudyumna and Guru Vasishtha performed Abhishek, ceremonial bath before coronation, and installed him as a king. Story of Revati. Even after hearing so many narrations, sage Agastya requested Sri Kartikeya to continue. Skanda said, "Listen, O son of Mitra Varun, that which has one part describing the great Devi, which devotes the second part to the knowledge of dharmas, Nirmal Vidya, and which imparts the meaning and significance of Gayatri. This is called Devi Bhagavath." There was a Muni called Ritvak who was possessed of Vidya or knowledge. He did the Putrotsav on appointed days, sacrifice performed for obtaining a son. He begot a son in the 4th quarter of Revati. He performed all the prescribed ceremonies like naming, thread and initiation. But since the birth of the child, there was always illness and sorrow in the household. Everyone was overcome with anger and desire, and the mother was always ill. The boy became disobedient, and the father became despondent and wondered why the boy had become so bad. He had even snatched away the wife of a Muni. In great disillusionment, Ritvak exclaimed, "It is better to be childless than to have a child who is disobedient and whose sinful acts push his ancestors out of heaven into the hell. He only brings sorrow to his parents. He has neither friends nor is he any use to his enemies. Only such parents are fortunate whose sons help others and make their parents happy. A weak son destroys the family, is inauspicious in the world, and in the end goes to hell." He became very sad and went to Garbji and said, "Sir, you are a learned Jyotish. Can you tell me the reason for begetting a son like this? I have always respected my Guru and have acquired knowledge of the Vedas. I practiced celibacy till I married at a proper age, and I have lived within the maryadas of a grahasti, codes of conduct for a householder. I have always shunned wrongdoing and evil desires. I only wanted a son, and so I performed the necessary yajna for that. Is it due to some sin of the mother or father that we have been given this kind of son who has destroyed our peace and happiness?" Sage Garg meditated on this matter and spoke, "Muni, the fault is neither yours nor that of your wife. It is the inauspicious timing of his birth, the 4th quarter of Revati, which is called Gundant, which is causing him to behave like this. You must worship Jagat Janani Bhagavati Durga, and when she is pleased, she will put an end to your sorrows." Hearing this, Ritvak Muni became furious and cursed the star Revati. At that moment, she fell from the cosmos onto the Kumudgiri mountain and enhanced its beauty. It is now called Revtak. Skand continued, "With the falling of the radiance of Revati on the mountain, a girl child was produced, who had the beauty and brilliance of Sri Lakshmi. This child came to the notice of Rishi Pramoch. He took her to his ashram in Kumudgiri, named her Revati, and began to raise her. When she grew into maidenhood, he began to look for a suitable husband for her. When he could not find anyone, he went to the temple of Agni and prayed. Agni Devata was pleased and spoke thus: "The bridegroom who is well versed in dharmas, brave, courteous, and handsome is a king called Durdam." At that time, Raja Durdam had come to the forest near the ashram. He was wise, strong, and brave. He entered the ashram and saw only Revati. Addressing her as Priye, he inquired where the Rishi was. Hearing that the Rishi was in the Agnishala, he went there, and with bowed head and folded hands, he greeted the Rishi. The Rishi immediately offered him Arghya and addressed him as son-in-law. To this, Raja Durdam asked which wife of his was in the sage's ashram, as he was already married and his wives were in his palace. The Rishi replied that Revati was the girl whom the king had addressed as Priye. The king asked the Rishi to forgive him, and he had no bad intentions when addressing the girl as Priye. The Rishi narrated how Agni Devata had named him as the prescribed husband for Revati, and that no one could prevent this. Therefore, the Rishi began making preparations for giving the girl in marriage to the king. The girl came to her foster father and requested that the marriage be performed under the star Revati. He replied that there were so many auspicious stars for marriage, and that Revati's star was no longer a nakshatram, constellation. The girl insisted, saying that only under this star would her marriage be auspicious. Then her father told her how Rishi Ritvak had cursed Revati to fall out of the cosmos. The girl asked her father, "Is it only Ritvak who can have powers? I know your capacity and you can surely reinstate Revati." So Rishi Pramoj did penance and meditation and restored Revati Nakshatram. The marriage was performed and the king left for his kingdom with Revati. He ruled as a just and benevolent king. Once a great Mahatma, Lomasji, visited his Raj Bhavan. Durdam requested him to read the Devi Bhagavath for him as he wished for the divine gift of a son. The Mahatma said, "O king, you are blessed. That is why a desire has awakened within you to hear Devi Bhagavath." At the auspicious hour, the reading started in the presence of the king and his wife. Havan was performed and little girls were given food and clothes. After some months, on an auspicious convergence of stars, the queen gave birth to a son whom they called Revat. Water kept in golden pots was poured on him during his naming ceremony. As he grew, he was initiated into the Vedas and he became a learned, benevolent, compassionate and competent ruler. After this, sage Agastya prostrated before Sri Kartikeya and left for his ashram. Then the rishi said, "Most fortunate of souls, Sootji, please do us the great favor of telling us the correct procedure for obeisance to Devi Bhagavath, how to gain the benefits and the Varnan, explanatory description." Sootji said, "First of all, a Jyotish should be consulted for the auspicious time for starting this great reading. The month of Jyesht, 3rd month, and the 6 months that follow are auspicious. The stars Hast, Ashwini, Mool, Pushya, Rohini, Shravan, and Mrigashira are favorable. If the reading is started on these days, they grant boons. Whichever star has Brihaspati in it, count up to the full moon. The count up to the 4 grants dharmas. The next 4 gives Lakshmi. The next one gives Siddhi of narration. Following 5 gives happiness. The next 6 give progeny. Then the next 4 give rulership. And the last 3 give pure knowledge or Nirmal Vidya." When reading Devi Bhagavath, one should put attention on this chakra. These are the instructions of Lord Shiva. To please the Devi, one should do this reading for 4 Navaratras. Apart from this, it can be read in other months also, but attention should be paid to auspicious time star, and day. An intelligent man should understand that just as elaborate arrangements are made for marriages, so also correct arrangements should be made before the reading starts. Learned men who are devoid of lust and greed should be present, and 4 devotees of Sri Jagadamba should sit with the main reader as help. Announcements should be made in all directions that Srimad Devi Bhagavath Katha is going to be read, and all are cordially invited. Followers of all religions are welcome because all gods worship Bhagavati Adya Shakti. The reading is nectar giving. All those who have divine love in their hearts should come and partake as it is their birthright. Even if one cannot attend all 9 days, they should come for as long as possible. The invitation should be given with utmost humility, and arrangements should be made for receiving the guests in a collective way. The place should be swept clean and the stage prepared and decorated. The earth should be smeared with cow dung and smoothed down. Erect a mandap and place banana plants on the sides. Silver paper decorations, streamers and flags should be tied. Place an asan for the reader to sit on and cover it with a silk cloth. The reader should sit facing the east and north. Carpet should be placed for the guests. It is desirable that the reader should be dharmic persons who can give discourses in a convincing manner, who have discretion of right and wrong, who have conquered their senses, who are knowledgeable, who are satisfied, and who worship the Devi. The congregation should be persons who have desire for pure knowledge, should be devotees, and should know how to receive and absorb the divine nectar. Also, they should be humble. It is not for people who are antisocial, greedy, full of lust, gossip mongers, or those who have hatred in their hearts. On the first day, the readers as well as the listeners should prepare themselves by waking before sunrise, finish their morning ablutions, sit in meditation, and eat frugally. The beautiful book is an image of the Devi herself. It should be worshipped with all ingredients used for a puja: kumkum, perfume, flowers, lamp, incense, etc. To remove all obstacles, 5 Brahmins should chant Durga Saptashati. After Pradakshina and Namaskar, the Devi should be praised thus: Katyayani, you are Mahamaya and the support of the universe. Bhavani, your form is beneficent. I am sinking in the ocean of illusion. Please save me. O Jagadambike, you are worshipped by Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara. Be pleased with me. I worship you and offer namaskar. After this, get into meditative state to listen with attention to the reader as if he were Ved Vyas himself. Pray to Ved Vyas to remove our darkness like the moon gives light to the sky. All this should be done for all 9 days. The Brahmins should be respectfully given their food and other requirements first, and then only the rest should eat. Attention should be detached from home, wife, children. The reading should be from sunrise to sunset, with a break of 2 hours for afternoon rest. Food and liquids should be taken sparingly so that one does not have to go for nature's calls in between. The reader should eat only once and preferably take fruit and milk. Now regarding the congregation, those who differentiate between Brahma, Vishnu and Shankar need not come, nor those who have no bhakti for Jagadambika. Also, cheats, violent people, enemies of Brahmins, atheists and Nastics have no place here. Those who steal from Brahmins, those who covet other people's wives, and those who misappropriate God's money have no right to sit at such a gathering. Those who come should abstain from lust and greed, be brahmachari, sleep on the floor, speak the truth, have control over their senses, and eat food from banana leaves. They should not eat brinjal, oil, dal, honey, burnt or stale food. No meat, masoor, radish, asafoetida, onion, garlic, carrots, greens with tubular stems. They should not associate with bad charactered people, enemies of Brahmins, atheists, inauspicious people, lawbreakers, and troublemakers. They must not listen to criticism or gossip. They should always keep calm, quiet, in balance, speak less, and be generous. People with skin diseases, sinners, those struck down by misfortune and bad luck, childless women, or women whose children have died, all these can also come and sit for Devi Bhagavath reading. Those who want to get realization in an easy way can also come. These 9 days are like 9 yagyas, sacrifices, and all the devotion, alms, havan, and mantras bear fruit because it is the nature of Devi to give favors and realization to those who seek it fervently. On the concluding day, in order to remove all badhas, Gayatri Sahasranama or Vishnu Sahasranama should be recited. Also, Durga Saptashati and Havan should be performed with kheer. The reader and other Brahmins should be honored with new clothes and money. When they are pleased, all the gods are also pleased. Sumangali ladies and little girls should be given food and dakshina. Those who can afford should give away gold, milch cows, elephants, horses, and land. The fruit of this is prosperity. The book should be draped in silk cloth, placed on a golden stand, and presented to the reader on Ashtami or Navami day. The man who performs this enjoys the bounties of this world and gets moksha when he dies. The reader can be any person as long as he has pure knowledge. He can be weak, old, poor, or young. There are many kinds of gurus who do impart divine knowledge. The person who sits on Vyas Gaddi, seat of the reader, should not bow his head to anyone. The Purana is sacred. Those who do not give undivided attention while it is being read not only lose benefits, but they also get punished with sorrow and misfortune. Those who offer gifts, fruits, clothes, money, vessels and blankets to those who have knowledge of this Purana become worthy of Bhagavad Dham. Those who drape the Devi Bhagavath with silk cloth and present it to others enjoy great benefits and happiness. The person who listens to the 9 parts of Devi Bhagavath receives all good fortunes, especially the gift of moksha. When surrounded by enemies or epidemics like cholera or plague, or disasters like drought and earthquake, one should listen with great devotion and dedication to Devi Bhagavath. Also, to overcome the effects of evil spirits, goblins, and malevolent beings, it is necessary to read Devi Bhagavath. Even those who are able to hear half a shlok or listen to half a chapter become eligible for a place at lotus feet. Devi Jagadamba herself only uttered half a slok, and from that has evolved this mighty book Srimad Devi Bhagavath. There is no dharma greater than Gayatri, and she resides in this book in the form of pure knowledge. A reading of this never fails to please the goddess. It contains a description of her abode in the Mani Dweep, Nabhi Chakra, and also the explanation of Gita that the Devi herself gave to Himalaya. The great goddess who is worshipped by Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva and Indra resides in Mani Dweep, Bhagavati Devi Jagadambika. Chapter 1, Episode 1 to 3. Conversation between Sootji and Shaunakji. Names of the Puranas. Narration of Shlokas. 28 names of Ved Vyas. And the description of the grandeur, magnitude, and venerability of the Bhagavad Purana. We pray to the Devi, who resides in all beings as consciousness, who is veritably the beginning and end of all creation, to have compassion and, in her benevolence, to transform our consciousness into collective consciousness. Shaunakji said, O fortunate among men, you have acquired the pure knowledge of the Puranas. O sinless and guiltless one, you were present and absorbing while Muni Vyas composed the 18 Puranas. Satyavati Nandan Vyasji revealed the secrets and connotations of all the Puranas in your presence, and you imbibed all the knowledge. Today, we are receiving the benefits of our punyas because you have blessed us with your visit. This sacred grove gives peace and quiet to the Munis and is outside the jurisdiction of Kali. This gathering is desirous of listening to discourses connected with the Puranas. Please be kind and narrate to us. O Holy One, you are devoid of the threefold heat that comes from having too much knowledge, and also the ravages of age have not touched you. O Bhagwan, please narrate to us those Puranas which have affinity with the Vedas. Those who have the faculty of hearing but do not listen to the Puranas are indeed unfortunate beings. Just as the 6 relishes or tastes quench the tongue, so does the hearing of holy texts quench the sense of the ears. Snakes do not have ears, still they lose control of their senses when sweet notes are played. Therefore, those who have ears but do not listen to the sound of truth should be called as deaf people. O auspicious one, all these Brahmins are sitting in respectful attention. To nourish our knowledge, there are so many wonderful scriptures, and they have been present in different ways. Also, they are attributed with qualities. Example, Vedant is Sattvic, Hindu philosophy based on Upanishads. Mimamsa, to become proficient in one of the 6 systems of philosophy by thorough investigation and examination, is called Rajasic, and Nyaya, that is truth, justice and practice, is called Tamasic. Saumya, O auspicious one, you have once said that the Purana also has 3 moods, Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. You have also pronounced Devi Bhagavath as the 5th Purana and as venerable and worshipful as the Vedas. Please be so kind as to tell us in detail about this most blessed and auspicious Bhagavad Purana. O all-knowing one, you have narrated other Puranas to us, but we still thirst for knowledge of Devi Bhagavath just like the gods thirsted for Amrit. Obeisance to this Purana which grants mukti. We have performed thousands of yagyas for this, but the fruit of a yagya is heaven. And after experiencing heaven, we again have to take a birth on this earth. In this way, we have been going to and fro from birth to rebirth. So please narrate this holy Purana to us so that we may get self-realization and freedom from the cycle of rebirth. Sootji said, this is a most holy and auspicious Purana, and by your asking me its secrets, I am blessed and most fortunate. Now I will start. This Purana contains all the revelations, the unraveling of the mysteries and description of the Advent. I bow to those lotus feet of Sri Jagadamba, which are adorned by Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh, and all the Devas, and which are meditated upon by yogis seeking Satchidanand. Respected Munis, this is the inexhaustible fount of all knowledge. She, who is called in the Upanishads as Vidya, Adya, eternal, Para, transcendent, Sarvagya, omniscient, who successfully breaks the knot of transmigration, who is all-pervading and omnipresent, who cannot be comprehended by the unworthy, and who gives a glimpse of herself to those who meditate on her lotus feet. Be compassionate and benevolent, so that all can benefit from this narration. I meditate on the Trigunatmika Shakti who has created the Sat Asat Swarup, real and illusory Maya worlds, and who preserves it, and at the time of dissolution devours and destroys it and remains alone. The unitary basis of the plurality of the universe. Exponents of the Puranas and Vedas mention Sri Brahma as the sole creator. At the same time, they say that Sri Brahma was born of the Nabhi lotus of Sri Vishnu. Nor can Sri Vishnu be the sole creator as he is supported by the ocean. The ocean cannot be the sole creator as it also requires a base to contain it. The Divine Mother, Devi Bhagavath, is unsupported. She is the support of the universe. She has no basis as she is everything. I prostrate at the lotus feet of that Bhagavati to whom Sri Brahma prayed when Lord Vishnu was in Yoga Nidra and the universe was in jeopardy. Salutations to the great goddess who is attributeless beyond the three gunas, who grants liberation from the bonds of the birth and death, and who is Maya Swarupini, the supreme creator of illusion and confusion, even to the greatest of gods. Srimad Devi Bhagavath is the greatest and purest of all the Puranas. It contains 18,000 shlokas. It has been written in Sanskrit. Sage Vyas has decorated them into 12 beautiful parts. The entire Purana has 318 chapters. Part 1 has 20, Part 2 has 12, Part 3 30, Part 4 has 25, Part 5 has 35, Part 6 has 31, Part 7 40, Part 8 24, Part 9 has 50, Part 10 has 13, Part 11 has 24, and Part 12 has 14 chapters. She who is Nirguna, attributeless, Sarvavyapi, permeating all, most benevolent mother, who can be attained by yoga, and who sustains all, who is the fourth dimension, Turiyavastha, the same Bhagavati whose energies are Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic, manifests herself in the forms of Mahalaskhmi, Mahasaraswati and Mahakali, which correspond in the human body to the three channels of the autonomous nervous system, Ida, Pingala, Sushumna. Whenever there is disorder or disarray in her creation, she incarnates to correct and protect it. Adi Shakti manifested as Brahma, Vishnu and Rudra to perform the functions of creation, protection and destruction. This act of incarnating is called Pratisarg. The stories of the Sun dynasty, the Moon dynasty and Hiranyakashipu and other demons is called Vansh. Stories of primal man or particular humans and the eras connected with them are called Manvantar. A detailed account of Manu, his lineage and his deeds is known as Vanshanucharit. These 5 characteristic features in the narrations of this Purana. The Mahabharata, consisting of 1.25 lakh stanzas and which is written by Sri Vyasji, also has these 5 characteristics and is a chronicle or a historic account. There are 4 Vedas and the Mahabharata is considered equal to a Veda. Shaunakji prayed, "O Sootji, please be so kind as to tell us how many Puranas are there and what is the number of shlokas contained in them. Out of fear of Kali Yuga, we are in hiding in this ancient forest under the protection of Sri Brahma's chakra, which he specially created for us. He also told us that we should follow this chakra and the spot on which it falls will be out of bounds for the ravages of Kali Yuga. He also told us to wait there till Satyug manifests. So, all the saints, rishis, munis, and holy men have congregated in this most holy and ancient forest where the influence of Kali cannot reach, and are waiting for Satyayug to come. It is our good fortune that you have deigned to visit us. We are eager to hear your wise and knowledgeable words. We have no other interest. We have achieved thoughtless awareness, so you can go on narrating for a long, long time. This Purana contains dharma, interpretations, and actions. It is also known as Brahma Vidya. Just by listening to it, one can get moksha. We are thirsting to hear your holy words describing the Leelas of Sri Jagadambika, who has the effect of washing the greatest of sins, and to hear that Purana which is decorated with the description of Sri Bhagavati. Sootji said, "Listen, O Munis, there are 18 Puranas, and the names are Matsya, Markandeya, Bhavishya, Bhagavat, Brahma, Brahmand, Brahma Vaivart, Vaman, Vayu, Vishnu, Varaha, Agni, Narad, Padma, Linga, Garuda, Kurm, and Skanda." The Matsya Puran has 14,000 shlokas, Markandeya Puran has 9,000 shlokas, Bhavishya Puran has 14,500 shlokas, Srimad Bhagavath has 18,000 shlokas, Brahma Puran has 10,000 shlokas, Brahmand Puran has 12,100 shlokas, Vaman Puran has 10,000 shlokas, Vayu Puran has 24,600 shlokas, Vishnu Puran has 23,000 shlokas, Varaha Puran has 24,000 shlokas, Agni Puran has 16,000 shlokas, Narad Puran has 25,000 shlokas, Padma Puran has 55,000 shlokas, Linga Puran has 11,000 shlokas, Garuda Puran has Sri Vishnu as the orator and has 19,000 shlokas, Kurma Puran has 17,000 shlokas, Skanda Puran has 81,000 shlokas. O sinless Munis, I have given you the names of the holy Puranas and the number of shlokas that each one contains. Then there are also 18 minor Puranas. These are Sanat Kumar Purana, Narsingha Purana, Narad Purana, Shiv Purana, Durvasa Purana, Kapil Purana, Manu Purana, Ushana Purana, Varuna Purana, Kalika Purana, Sambha Purana, Varuna Purana, Kalika Purana, Parashar Purana, Aditya Purana, Maheshwar Purana, Bhagavat Purana, and Vashishta Purana. After completing the Puranas and the minor Puranas, the most auspicious Vyasji composed the historical epic Mahabharata. In every quarter of every era, Vyasji has established dharmas through the writings of the Puranas. Ved Vyas is Lord Vishnu's Ansh Avatar, that is, partial avatar, and for the spiritual benefit of the world, he divides the Vedas into many parts. Even after knowing this, the Brahmins of Kali Yuga must be ignorant and short-lived if they have not recognized Sri Vishnu in the form of Ved Vyas. Women, Shudras, and Brahmins who are free from worldly tasks are entitled to listen to the Vedas. For their benevolence, the Vedas have manifested. This is now the 28th quarter of the 7th Manvantar era, presided over by Vaivaswat Manu. Satyavati Nandan Ved Vyas is my Guru. No one has such a complete knowledge of Dharma. He is the Ved Vyas of this Manvantar. Again, in the 29th Manvantar, Drauni will be the Vyas. Up to date, there have been 27 incarnations of Ved Vyas. The rishis then asked, "O Holy One, please give us a description of the Ved Vyasas of every yuga." Sootji replied, "In the very first quarter, Sri Brahma divided the Vedas. In the second, Prajapati performed the work of Ved Vyas. In the third, Ujna. In the fourth, Brihaspati. In the 5th, Savita. In the 6th, Mrityudev occupied the seat of Vyasji. In the 7th, Maghva. In the 8th, Vashisht. In the 9th, Saraswat. In the 10th, Trigama. In the 11th, Trivish. In the 12th, Bharadwaj. In the 13th, Antariksh. In the 14th, Dharam. In the 15th, Trayaruni. In the 16th, Dhananjay. In the 17th, Megatithi. 18th, Vrati. In the 19th, Sage Atri. In the 20th, Gautam. And in the 21st, Puriyatma Uttam. Also in the reckoning are Vajashrava Vain, Amushyayan Som, Trin Bindu, Bhargav, Shakti, Jatukarnya, and Krishna Dvaipayan. All these constitute the 28 incarnations of Ved Vyas. I had the honor of hearing from Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas the recital of the most auspicious Srimad Devi Bhagavath. This is most holy and capable of destroying the greatest of sins. Every stanza has the essence of the Vedas in it. It fulfills all wishes and grants freedom from bondage. It is held sacred and dear by all seekers. After completing the work, Sri Vyasji first narrated it to his son Sukhdev, who was still unborn and unattached, as he considered him most worthy. Munis, I was present there. He gave the discourse and I absorbed all. He was very merciful. It is through his benevolence that the most secret Purana has been revealed. O Munis, Srimad Devi Bhagavath is the ripe fruit of the heavenly Kalpavriksha. To cross the ocean of illusion, one must eat this fruit with awe and respect. The sinner who is entangled and whose ascent has been defiled and ruined, Yoga Bhrashta Sthiti, if he can somehow get an opportunity, he will definitely attain the lotus feet of Adi Shakti and dwell with the yogis. That Devi, who is Nirguna, who gives darshan in meditation, she enters the innermost chambers of her devotee's heart and dwells there. To cross the deep and unfathomable ocean of illusion, this is the safest refuge. He who is born a human being with the faculties of hearing and understanding, and who has opportunities to hear Devi Bhagavath and still does not listen to a reading of it, he is most unfortunate and better off dead. He who spends all his life listening to gossip and parninda, that is backbiting, is most unfortunate and has wasted a lifetime. Chapter 1, Episode 4. Ved Vyas's sojourn in the forest. Naradji meeting him and asking him to narrate the ancient incident of conversation between Sri Vishnu and Sri Brahma. Homage to the Devi. The rishis requested, Sootji, please tell us about the birth of Sukhdev ji and what qualities he possessed which made him so knowledgeable. Also, it is said he was obtained from an arani, drill used for producing fire. We are full of wonder and await your narration. Sootji said, in ancient times, Satyavati Nandan Vyasji lived in an ashram on the banks of the Saraswati river. In his ashram, a pair of sparrows had built a nest and hatchling had just come out of the egg. The parents were so affectionate that they used to rub their bodies against the baby. Also, they spent long hours bringing food to the baby. He watched this and thought, if birds love their children so much, how much more a human being will love his progeny. He pondered over this matter and then went to Mandarachal mountain. He began to ponder as to which god he should pray to for the boon of a son. Should he pray to Sri Vishnu, Sri Shiva, Indra, Sri Brahma, Surya, Sri Ganesh, Swami Kartikeya, Agni or Varun? While he was thus contemplating, Naradji, the most pure, appeared with his veena. Vyasji immediately greeted him, paid obeisance, and made arrangements for washing his feet. He inquired after his well-being. Naradji accepted all the customs and then asked Ved Vyas why he looked so anxious. Vyasji replied, "It is said that a childless man's life has no meaning. This is causing me sadness, and I am trying to find out which god I must appease and pray to for this boon. O Maharishi, you are the ocean of kindness. Please tell me which god will grant me a son." Naradji replied, "O auspicious one, this very question was asked of Shri Hari, Vishnu, by my revered father Shri Brahmaji. Shri Vishnu is the protector of this world. Shri Lakshmi is always by his side. The divine jewel, Kaustubh, adorns his chest, and he holds Shankh, Chakra and mace. He wears Pitambar clothes, that is yellow clothes. He has 4 arms and his emblem Shrivats shines on his chest. He is the god of all gods. He was in Samadhi, deep meditation, and my father was keen to know on whom this god of gods was meditating. So he asked Sri Vishnu, "You are the god of all the gods. You are the protector of the universe. Please tell me why you are meditating and on whom your attention is fixed. I am very curious to know. I was created out of the lotus of your Nabi, and then I created the world. So you are the most self-contained. I am full of wonder as to who is more superior than you. I only know that you are the cause of all, and that by your wish I created the world. Even Sri Shiva goes into destructive mode when you give the sign. It is on your desire that the sun orbits the sky, and the wind blows, and fire burns, and the rain falls. I do not know any god greater than you. So I am in confusion, for I cannot imagine that there is anyone who can be meditated upon by you. So please explain this very clearly to me." On hearing this Vinati from Sri Brahma, Sri Vishnu said, "Brahman, listen with full attention. We all know that all creation is done by you. I protect the creation, and at the time of dissolution, Sri Shiva destroys. But those who learn in the Vedas say that the energy that we use for creation, protection, and dissolution is given to us by the most supreme Devi, Shri Adishakti. In order to create, you have been endowed with the energy of Rajas. I have been endowed with Sattvic Shakti, and Sri Shiva has been endowed with Tamasic Shakti. Without these Shaktis, you could not create, I could not protect, and Sri Shiva could not destroy. We succeed in our endeavors only by this divine Shakti. The tangible and the invisible, that is subtle, I will describe both to you. O Brahma, listen carefully. It is this Shakti which causes me to sleep on Sheshnag and to awaken whenever necessary. I am always in meditation upon this Shakti and can never exist without it. Sometimes I am in the company of Sri Lakshmi, sometimes I wage wars with the negative forces, and at other times I vanquish the enemies of the Devas. A long time ago, when nothing existed, there was only the ocean on all sides. 2 mighty Danavs emerged from the wax in my ears, and I spent many yugas fighting them. Only with the help of Bhagavati Adishakti could I defeat and kill them. You were witness to this, O Brahma. Whenever Bhagavati Adishakti has indicated, I have incarnated on the earth as a tortoise, a boar, Narasimhan, that is half lion, half man, a Vaman, that is dwarf. Many ages ago, the string of my bow broke and severed my head from my body. You are a great sculptor, and you joined the head of a horse to my body. I came to be known as Haishira, having a horse's head. All this was done with the energy of Adi Shakti. In this whole creation, I do not know anyone greater or more powerful than Bhagavati Adi Shakti. Naradji said, the narrator of this great secret is Shri Vishnu, and the listener is Shri Brahma. My father imparted this knowledge to me, and now I advise that if you want a son, you must worship the lotus feet of Bhagavati Jagadamba in the temple of your heart. She will certainly fulfill all your desires. Accordingly, Vyasji worshipped the Devi and journeyed to the mountains to meditate upon her lotus feet. Chapter 1, Episode 5. The story of Hygreev Avatar and the killing of an Asura called Hygreev. The Rishi said, Sootji, this is a very puzzling event that you have narrated. The very same God Vishnu, who is the protector of all, who is praised in the Vedas and who is known as Jagat Prabhu Bhagavan Shri Hari, he suffered the loss of his head. This is definitely a play of the Lord. Please tell us forthwith how this incident happened. Sootji said, Munis, Bhagavan Vishnu is most effulgent and magnificent, and his play is many-colored. This incident happened many eons ago. Shri Vishnu had engaged in battle with the negative forces for 10,000 years. At the end, he returned to Vaikuntha weary and tired. He sat in Padmasan pose and set his mighty bow against the earth. It still had its string tied taut. In exhaustion, he leaned against the bow, partly out of sleep and partly out of Leela. At that time, the Devas were planning to hold a yajna. Once the decision was made, Shri Indra, Shri Brahma, Shri Shankar and other Devas went to pay respects to Shri Vishnu in Vaikuntha. The boon that the Devas desired was freedom from obstacles in their work. But they could not get a darshan of Shri Vishnu. By going into meditation, they found the place where Shri Vishnu was enthroned. They beheld Param Prabhu Shri Hari deep in Nidra Yoga, and they waited at that place for him to awaken. But when that did not happen for a long time, they became apprehensive. Indra asked for advice from the assembled gods as to the best way of waking the Lord. Shri Shiva said, under normal circumstances, it is forbidden to break Nidra Yoga, but in this case, it is necessary so that the work of the yajna can be started. Then Shri Brahma created a beetle, Vamri, and said, this beetle will cut the string and the bow will straighten with a loud bang. This sound will awaken the sleeping Lord. Hearing this, the beetle objected. Salutations to Shri Lakshmikant Narayan, the Supreme One, the protector of all living and non-living things. How can I disturb his sleep? What benefit will I get by doing this heinous act? Every living thing does an action only for some reward. So, only if there is some benefit for me in doing this unholy act, I will consider it. Shri Brahma made an offer that Vamri will get a share of the boons of the yajna. When offerings are put into the Havan Kund during the yajnas, whatever falls outside will be the beetle's share. Sootji said, Vamri accepted this and immediately gnawed through the lower part of the string. As soon as the tension of the bow was released, it unbent with a loud booming sound which frightened even the Devas. Darkness fell all around. The sun's rays became weak and all the Devas exclaimed, Oh, what is going to happen now? Hear this, O Rishis. Suddenly, the head of Shri Vishnu, complete with crown and locks, disappeared in the air. When a feeble light came in, Shri Shankar and Shri Brahma beheld the body of Shri Vishnu without the head. They became very anxious. All the gods wept and began to sink into the ocean. They prayed to Sri Vishnu to enlighten them as to what was happening and what had to be done. Sri Brahma said, "This is all the doing of Kal Bhagwan, the god of time. Whatever is written will come to pass. In the same way, once my head was cut off by Sri Shiva. Even Devraj Indra once broke into 1,000 pieces and fell from the heaven into Mansarovar. There he dwelt on a lotus, so no one should grieve or be afraid. We must all meditate upon Vidyaswarupini Mahamaya. She dwells in the entire creation and she will solve our problem. She supports the universe and one of her names is Brahma Vidya or Nirmal Vidya. All living things are her children and she exists within them." Then Sri Brahma invited the Vedas who were present there. He said, "Brahma Vidya Swarupini Bhagavati Jagadamba is most worshipable. It is extremely difficult to operate as a cell in the divine body. Bhagavati Mahamaya cleanses all karmas. So all of you should sing her praises." Then the Vedas, who had assumed beautiful forms, began songs in praise of that Mahamaya Jagadamba, who is the fountain of knowledge. The Vedas began their chant, "O Devi, you are Mahamaya, the supreme creator of illusion and confusion, even to the greatest of gods. It is your nature to create. You are the giver of life to the entire universe. You are Nirguna, beyond the three gunas. You are consciousness devoid of the qualities and attributes of the mind. You are the seed energy of God's desire, the pure desire of Sadashiva. Shri Mata, we worship you. You are in the form of the universe to give ashraya, protection to your creation. You are also the individual self, Vishwa, in the wakeful state. You are Dhi, pure knowledge, Shri, auspiciousness, Kanti, splendor, effulgence, Kshama, ocean of forgiveness, Shraddha, object of reverence, Medha, intelligence, Smriti, code of conduct, the half syllable Om, the Ardha Matra is you. In Gayatri, you are the Pranav, life force. You are Jaya and Vijaya, that is royal and victorious. You are Lajja, that is bashful modesty in all beings. You are Dhatri, one who nourishes all with divine vibrations. You are Kirti, worthy of honor and worship. And you are Daya, compassionate. We offer you our pranams, O Devi. You are the creator and the protector of the three worlds. You are the embodiment of benevolence. You are the mother of all the mothers. You are the fount of knowledge. It is by your blessing alone that the true meaning of the Vedas became clear. You are the giver of all fruits of our prayers. Whatever you do, it is for the benevolence of all beings. You are most worshipful. You lift the sadness of people who are in extreme sorrow. You have always the mantras as your form. You are the seed of the mantras and you give mantras their effect. Sarva Mantra Siddhi. You destroy the darkness of ignorance. You created Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh, Indra, Agni, Saraswati and Surya. When it is your desire to create, you cause these gods to create universes. You are without equal. There is no being yet created who can describe you adequately or enumerate all your names. Those who cannot understand the small stretch of water of their existence, how can they comprehend the vast and mighty ocean that is you? Bhagavati, even among gods, there is no one who can encompass or fathom your qualities. You are Jagat Janani, that is sole mother of the universe. Obeisance to that goddess who is the foundation of all organs of beings and who is ever present in all beings. When you assume the Abhaydan Mudra, you give boons with one hand and protection and fearlessness with the other. You are the primordial letters. O Mother, you look after and guide those visible and invisible gods and officials. You are the receptacle of the entire universe. When all the scriptures could not succeed in revealing all your forms, your beauty, your powers, how can we mere mortals aspire to this knowledge? What more can be said when you yourself are not aware of yourself? O benevolent and propitious goddess, you do know that the head of Sri Vishnu has got separated from his divine body. Rather, in spite of knowing it, you are testing its effect. At the present moment, Shri Hari is without a head, and this is amazing us as well as causing us sorrow. It is beyond our intelligence to know the reason why you, the giver and taker of life, are delaying the rejoining of his head to his body. Sri Jagadamba, this play of yours is beyond our comprehension. Is it that some Daitya or demon has done Ghor Tapasya and received this boon from you that Sri Vishnu should become headless? Or does it please you to see him in this condition? Sri Jagadambe, could it be that you are displeased with Sri Lakshmi and therefore she must be deprived of her lord? We accept that it is possible that you are displeased with Sri Lakshmi, but we pray for forgiveness because she emanated from you. Please be merciful and restore Sri Vishnu's head so that Sri Lakshmi can be reunited with her lord. We invoke you with one voice, O Devi. Please bestow life on the Master of the Universe, Sri Vishnu, so that this sorrowful ocean can once again give salvation and regenerate itself. O Mother, we are not even aware of the place where the sacred head of Sri Vishnu has fallen. It is quite clear that without divine assistance, we can do nothing. O Devi, in the same way that you nourish the Devas with nectar, so also please nourish this creation and keep it in existence. Sootji said, after the Vedas had worshipped the Mother with body, mind and soul, the Devi Mahamaya, Gunatita, became Prasanna, and a heavenly voice was heard by the Devas and the Vedas. There was benevolence in every syllable and filled everyone with joy. They were privileged to hear this. Devas, now there is no need to be worried. Calm your attention, become peaceful and ascend your seats. The Vedas have pleased me by singing my praises. Any mortal who reads or listens with great bhakti and shraddha to these stutis, all his sorrows and turmoils will be destroyed, and he will live in peace and joy. These stories sung by the Vedas are equal to Vedas. Now I will tell you the reason for the separation of Sri Vishnu's head from his body. Nothing in this creation happens without a cause. Once Sri Vishnu was seated on his throne with Sri Lakshmi. When he glanced at her beautiful face, he suddenly began to laugh. Sri Lakshmi concluded that her face had ceased to please the Lord, as he never laughed like this without a proper reason. Sri Lakshmi became angry. Even though she was of sattvic nature, she got overwhelmed by tamoguna. As soon as this fierce tamasic energy entered, it began to actualize a predestined episode involving the Devas. Sri Mahalakshmi in anger uttered these words, "May your head fall off from your body." Consequently, at this moment the head of Sri Vishnu is floating in the salty sea. Devas, there is one more cause that some great feat is going to be accomplished by you without doubt. There was a demon called Hygreev. He had very strong limbs and had achieved great fame. He sat on the banks of Saraswati river and did great tapasya. He chanted the single syllable Maya Bija mantra for 1,000 years without eating or drinking. He conquered all his senses. He worshipped my tamasic Shakti with all its ornaments and embellishments. I was pleased with his tapasya and appeared before him in the same form and with the same adornments as he had meditated upon. I was seated upon my Vahana, the lion, and there was an overflow of compassion and vibrations. I said, "Most fortunate one, ask whatever boon you wish and it shall be granted." Upon hearing me, he was filled with worship and awe. He immediately performed pradakshina, that is perambulation, and worshipped my feet. On beholding my form, his eyes misted and filled with tears of joy. He folded his hands and started reciting stutis. Hygreev said, "O most compassionate Devi, praise be to you. You are Mahamaya. supreme creator of illusion and confusion, even to the greatest of gods. Creation, preservation, and destruction are a part of your nature. It pleases you to bestow boons on your devotees. You are beneficent and you grant realization of the ultimate to those who surrender to you. You are the cause which gives fragrance to the earth, sound to the akash, purity to the water, radiance to the fire, and quality of penetration to the ether. O Devi Maheshwari, you have given senses and essences to all our organs, nose, skin, eyes, tongue, ears and others. O Devi, they all come from you. I said, you have done a most remarkable tapasya and I am pleased with your bhakti. You may ask for a boon that is dear to you. Whatever is your desire, I shall fulfill it. Hygreev said, Mother, grant that I may never face death. I desire to become an immortal yogi. Neither the gods nor the demons should defeat me. I said, that which is born must die, and that which dies must be born again. This is an irreversible law, O Rakshasraj. Ask again. Hygreev said, Yes, mother, I understand. Then let it be that I die only at the hands of another Hygreev. No other being should be capable of killing me. This is my desire. Please be gracious and fulfill it. I said, Mahabhag, now return to your kingdom and reign in peace. It will be that no one but a Hygreev can endure life. After granting this boon, I, in my tamasic mood, withdrew. The demon returned to his kingdom very satisfied and happy. This very same Hygreev is now troubling the Vedas and the Munis. In Trilok, there is no one who can destroy him. So, the solution is that the head of a beautiful horse should be placed on the body of Sri Vishnu. This can only be performed by Sri Brahma. Then Lord Hygreev will destroy this cruel and troublesome demon. Sootji said, after saying this, the heavenly voice ceased. The Devas were overjoyed and immediately went to Sri Brahma. In an instant, a horse's head was placed on the body of Sri Vishnu, and with the grace of Bhagavati Jagadambika, the incarnation of Hygreev came into existence. The demon was very arrogant, and Sri Hygreev engaged in war with him for many years before killing him. All mortals who listen to this episode get relief from their worldly sufferings. Descriptions of the compassion and benevolence and her victories over sin and arrogance give peace and blessings to those who listen to this. Chapter 1, Episode 6 to 9. Knowledge of the grandeur of the three Vedas through reading or listening. Boon given by the Devi to Madhu-Kaitabh. Sri Vishnu goes into Yoga Nidra and Sri Brahma sings Devi Stutis for waking Sri Vishnu. The Rishis asked, O gentle and auspicious one, you have just told us that when there was only ocean and water prevailed everywhere, Sri Vishnu fought a battle for 5,000 years against two demons, Madhu and Kaitabh. May it please you to tell us how such terrible and ferocious demons, whom even the gods could not defeat, came into existence. We have always desired to hear of this event, and now that you have deigned to visit us, we are taking the opportunity of asking you to tell us. We will be attentive with all our senses, especially hearing and sight. It is said that knowledge comes from hearing, and seeing is registered in the attention. It is said that there are three kinds of listening: Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. Learned men have termed the hearing of the Vedas and Shastras as Sattvic, letters and literature as Rajasic, and stories connected with fighting or exposing the mistakes and faults of others as Tamasic. They have further divided Sattvic into 3 degrees: excellent, medium, and low. The readings which grant moksha are considered excellent. Those which grant heaven are medium, and those which give pleasure as low or inferior. Rajas literature has also been classified into 3. When the beauty and ornaments of the heroine of the drama are described, it falls in the first category of excellence. When the description is that of a courtesan or concubine, it falls in the medium class, and where it describes a hermaphrodite, it is of the low class. The 3 classes of Tamasic narration should be clearly understood. To listen to accounts where war has been fought against adharmic people falls into the first category of excellent. When the war is the outcome of enmity and hostility, as in the case of the Pandavas, it is of the medium class. Wars which are fought without any cause or provocation, listening to the accounts about them are of low class. Therefore, listening to Puranas is of the highest order. O learned one, be pleased to narrate those holy episodes which give us moksha. Sootji said, O superior beings, that which you wish to hear and which I am eager to tell you will surely grant us both freedom from rebirth. In ancient times, all the 3 lokas got submerged in the primordial ocean. Only Shri Vishnu was in existence, lying on the belly of Sheshnag. Out of the wax in his ears emerged 2 demons, Madhu and Kaitabh. Soon they grew young and powerful, and they began their escapades. They also began to wonder many things like who is in support of this ocean, who created it, and how. How did they come to be in the ocean? Who created them and who was their father? They determined to find answers to all these questions, but they were not able to find out anything. So one day, Kaitabh said to Madhu, Brother, the cause of our existence in this water is Bhagavati Shakti. She is all-powerful. She is the one who created this ocean, and she is the support. This primordial Shakti has caused us to come into existence. They were thus expressing their desire when there was a heavenly sound of a Bija mantra. The 2 brothers diligently repeated the sound over and over again, and then suddenly it took a shape in the sky, more brilliant and dazzling than lightning. It dawned on them that this is indeed a mantra without any doubt whatsoever. They went into meditation, and the mantra pervaded their awareness, and they got a glimpse of its qualities and attributes. They began chanting and meditating on this mantra for a full 1,000 years, having gone beyond mind and senses. They had achieved the state of being Nischint, Nirvichar and Nirvikalp. Seeing this, Adi Shakti was filled with benevolence. The heavens were filled with the sound, Daityas, I am pleased with your tapasya. Freely ask for a boon so that I can grant it to you. Madhu and Kaitabh said, O Devi, you who are easily pleased and bestows boons, grant us Svecha Maran, or death at our own desire. The Devi said, I grant you the boon that you both will die only when you desire to die. Neither the gods nor the demons can kill either of you. Sootji says, upon getting this boon, both the brothers became filled with arrogance and pride. They began to trouble all the inhabitants of the ocean. One day, they happened to see Sri Brahma seated on the lotus, and they had an urge to fight with him. They challenged Sri Brahma to fight, and if he would not fight, he should leave the Brahmasan and go away. Sri Brahma was disturbed. He did not know the exact strength of his opponents. He knew all the strategies of war, like winning the enemy by giving gifts, of inflicting chastisement, of secrecy, but not knowing their strength, it was not advisable to engage with them in war. He glanced at Sri Vishnu, who was in deep nidra on the coils of Sheshnag. He thought, Sri Vishnu is so strong, only he can protect me, but first he has to be awakened. So Sri Brahma came down from his asana on the lotus and prostrated at the feet of the sleeping Lord. He began sthavan, hymns of praise to the Lord. But being overcome by Nidra Yoga, he could not be awakened. Sri Brahma thought, "Now these demons will certainly destroy me. Is there anyone who will protect me?" Then Sri Brahmadeva decided to recite the Yoga Nidra Stuti to the Devi, as only she had the power to protect him. It was the Devi herself who had caused Sri Vishnu to succumb to this overwhelming deep slumber. It is clear that the Devi governs Sri Vishnu, and when he is in deep sleep, even his Shakti, Sri Lakshmi, is also governed by the same state. All the gods, including me, Shankar, Savitri, Lakshmi, and Uma, are presided over by this Sri Bhagavati Yoga Nidra, and therefore there is no one else but she who can protect me. Sri Brahma once again took his seat on the Nabhi Kamal of Sri Vishnu and began stuti of Bhagavati Sri Yoga Nidra. O Devi, you are verily the cause of the world. All the Vedas and scriptures are witness to this. You are the reason why the protector of the universe, Sri Vishnu, is lying in deep repose. O Divine Mother, you reside in the consciousness of all living things. O Bhavani, you reside in all beings in various moods and forms. No one can fathom the mysteries of your Leela. The Munis worship you in a mode called Sandhya, that is, prayers enjoined to be said in the morning, noon, and evening, and go into thoughtless awareness 3 times a day. O Mother, you abide as discretion in living beings so that they know good from evil, and the splendor and glory that the gods and goddesses enjoy comes from you, the Shri. You preside over the universe as honor, satisfaction, effulgence, intellect, affection, faith, modesty, luster, reflection, and peace. You are the mother of the universe. Even learned sages with knowledge of the Vedas have not been able to unravel your mysteries, and even the Vedas cannot contain your description, as the Vedas themselves have emanated from you. During Yagyas, when Havan is performed, the learned ones take your name as Swaha. Otherwise, the gods cannot partake of the sacrifice. It is you who gives them this privilege. Also, it is you who protects them. You have protected me once before, and now I am again in danger from the demons Madhu and Kaitabh. O Devi, please release Sri Vishnu from the influence of your Maya. O most powerful one, please withdraw the power of sleep from Shri Hari, or be pleased to destroy the 2 demons Madhu and Kaitabh, or I will be defeated by them. O Devi, you are the mother of the entire universe. It is your nature to fulfill the prayers of those who surrender at your lotus feet. Those who rise beyond the worship of all gods and become totally immersed in the worship and adoration of your lotus feet are indeed the blessed, virtuous, and fortunate beings of the world. Knowledge, luster, honor, and other auspicious qualities are part of you. You are the embodiment of divine beauty. One of your energies, which is Nidra, is holding Sri Vishnu captive. You are verily Bhagavati. Your Shakti envelops the entire universe as the universe was born of you. It is you who in the beginning gave Sri Vishnu the power to sustain and protect the creation. With your energy in the form of his Shakti, Sri Lakshmi, he was successful in the protection of the universe. But today, he lies inert, unable, and completely overpowered by sleep. It is clear that whatever you desire, only that happens. O Mother, if I am to survive, and if it is your holy will, please break this silence and come to my assistance. These demons are an epithet of Kal, that is Yama, and there must be some reason why you have caused them to exist. Could it be that they are here to deride and scorn me? Sri Devi, I am beginning to understand your amazing play. After completing the creation, you move freely, enjoying its beauty. Sometimes you even absorb it into yourself. You appointed me creator, and now if this creation is vanquished, it will be to my dishonor and disgrace. Sootji says, When Brahma praised the Devi in this way, she withdrew from the pores of Sri Vishnu and appeared beside him in the form of Tamasi Nidra Devi, the goddess who abides in all as sleep. After this release, Sri Vishnu began to move. Seeing him awake, Sri Brahma's happiness and relief knew no bounds. He began perambulations around the Lord Sri Vishnu. The rishis made this observation. Mahabhag Sootji, after hearing this episode, we are filled with astonishment and wonder. The Vedas, Shastras, Puranas and learned men have all described Sri Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva as the most supreme, eternal and primeval. In this entire Brahmand, there is no greater or superior being. Sri Brahma accomplished the entire creation. Sri Vishnu is the sole protector and sustainer. And at the time of dissolution, Sri Shiva annihilates and destroys. These are the three main functionaries and they act in the three modes of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Of the three, Sri Vishnu is considered the foremost. He is the master of the universe and is known as Adi Dev. He is all-powerful and no other god compares with him. Therefore, it is surprising to hear that he who pervades all should have got pervaded by Yogamaya Nidra. Oh please, unravel this mystery for us and tell us who this Shakti is. Who could command superiority over the Lord? How she came into being, what are her powers, and what is her description? You have unlimited knowledge, so please help us by cutting the knot of ignorance, skepticism and wonder that is puzzling us. Sootji replied, O Honorable Munis, who can accomplish this task? Narad Muni, son of Sri Brahma, sage Kapil and other holy men have all been unsuccessful in their endeavors. This subject is fathomless and beyond thought. Who am I to even attempt? He who is the support of the earth, who is described in the Vedas as infinite and immortal, as the supreme protector is worshipped as the Param Parameshwar of all the gods, Sri Vishnu. Then there are those who worship Sri Shiva as supreme. He is described in the Vedas as Mahadev, God Almighty, Sri Vatsala, darling of the goddess, Sarvasaha, bearer of everything, Swadrita, self-supported, Trilochana, three-eyed, Pinakapani, holding the mighty bow and the other sacred names. He resides on Mount Kailash and goes around surrounded by bhoots. He demolished the yagya of Daksh. Those who worship him also worship the sun. He is Paramatma. Others believe that Agni worship is the best according to various mentions in the Vedas. Still others worship Indra and Varuna as most supreme. It is the teaching of Maharishis that just as the Ganga is contained in the water of all its tributaries and streams, so also Sri Vishnu pervades all the gods. In ancient times, learned men have devised various measures for determining the authenticity of a theory or a philosophy. The three main scales or measures used for comparison were Pratyaksh, cognizable by sight, tangible or perceivable through senses, Anuman, hypothesis, deduction, and Shabd, that is voice or sound. Mimamsa, one of the 6 systems of Hindu philosophy, has a reasoning whereby one topic is automatically proved with the help of another, and they have a scale of 5. Those Vedic scholars who are fully conversant with the Puranas have 7 measures for verification. That which is beyond all these scales, testimonies, verifications, is Parabrahma. It is advisable that these learned men use their theories of deduction even when they experience something through their senses. Disciplined and learned men have determined that Sri Brahma is endowed with the Shakti to create, Sri Vishnu to sustain, and Sri Shiva to destroy. Sesh and the tortoise are supports. Fire has the Shakti to consume and air has the energy of movement. This energy which energizes, which gives Shakti for action, is Adya Shakti. It is by this Shakti that the gods get their godliness. Those on whom Adi Shakti does not shower benevolence, no matter who it may be, that person becomes incapacitated and inert. This Adi Shakti who exists in all beings is called as Brahma. It is desirable that all holy and learned men recognize, worship and awaken this Shakti within themselves. If the Shakti of Vishnu is absent, he will be unable to perform the protection and preservation of the world. Similarly, Sri Brahma cannot create without Adi Shakti's energy, and Sri Shiva cannot destroy the negative forces in his Sanhar Leela, dance of destruction. All those who are still caught in the web of deductions, proofs, theories and verifications should quickly determine this truth. It is the Adi Shakti who creates, nourishes and dissolves. No one, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Indra, Agni, Pavan, etc. can function independently. The existence of Adi Shakti provides the energy for their actions. Therefore, Adi Shakti is Sarvagya, all-pervading, Sarvopari, almighty and above all, Parashakti. She is worshipped by holy men in two ways. Those who are desirous of perceiving her by their senses worship her in Sagun form, that is, endowed with qualities and attributes, while ascetics and detached, self-realized souls worship her as Nirguna, attributeless, beyond the three gunas and three nadis. She is consciousness devoid of the qualities and attributes of the mind. She is Shamatmika, peace in her essence. Devotees with their minds at peace are her abode. She is Dharmadhara, the support of right conduct handed down by tradition in each age. She is Parabrahma Swarup, the ultimate power, the energy manifested in every particle as well as the primordial vibration is she. She is the primal power, the unitary basis of the plurality of the universe. She is eternal, uncomprehended by space and time. She is worshipped by the highest, and this is testified by all the Shastras. She is the great, immeasurable, supreme object of attention and worship. Sootji continued the narration of the destruction of Madhu-Kaitabh at the hands of Sri Vishnu. Sootji said, after Tamasi Devi Nidra withdrew her control over Sri Vishnu and assumed her form in the heavens, Sri Vishnu moved his limbs, yawned several times and sat up. He observed Sri Brahma standing before him, overcome with fear. Then the splendid, magnificent and glorious Lord, protector and guardian of the universe, spoke in solemn tones. O Padmayoni Brahma, what brings you here, far from your jap, silent repetition of a mantra, and tap, meditation? You seem to be in fear of something. Sri Brahma said, O Lord, two demons, Madhu and Kaitabh, emerged from the wax in your ears, and they are of horrible appearance and terrible strength. They are trying to kill me, and I am overcome with fear, and my faculties are not functioning. Only you can protect me. Sri Vishnu said, come and take a seat and have no more fear. These demons have taken leave of their senses. They will definitely come here and challenge me. Sootji said, as Sri Vishnu finished speaking, the two demons, intoxicated with ego and arrogance, reached the abode of Sri Vishnu and challenged Sri Brahma thus. You have come here to hide. Do you think you can escape us? We will kill you first, and then this person who reclines on the coils of a serpent. Either you fight or surrender yourself as our slave. Sootji says, on hearing this, Sri Vishnu said to them, O gallant demons, come and fight with me. You are very strong and are filled with unbridled arrogance. Come and fight, and I will remove your conceit and false pride. On hearing this, their eyes turned red with anger. Madhu advanced first and began to wrestle with Sri Vishnu. As soon as Madhu began to tire, Kaitabh would take his place. They continued to fight and were watched from the heavens by Bhagavati Shakti and Sri Brahma. The war lasted for 5,000 years and Sri Vishnu began to contemplate their death. He thought, "We have been fighting for so long, but these demons have not shown signs of tiring, whereas I feel tired. This is surprising and astonishing. Where has my might and strength gone? How are these demons so tireless and fresh? What circumstance is this?" When the demons saw concern on the face of Sri Vishnu, they became overjoyed and spoke in thunderous tones. "O Vishnu, if you are tired and cannot fight anymore, bow your head and with folded hands acknowledge that you are our slave. If you still have any strength left, come and fight and we will kill you." Sri Vishnu was seated on the deep and bottomless ocean. He listened to the spiteful and malicious utterances of the two demons, and then in sweet tones, Madhurya, he spoke thus: "It is an ancient Maryada that when fighting a war, brave warriors do not attack an opponent who is tired, frightened, whose weapons have fallen, who himself has fallen, or who is still a child. On this battlefield, I have fought with you for 5,000 years alone, and without a break. You two brothers of equal strength have been resting in turns. If I also rest, I can continue fighting." Sootji said. Upon hearing this, the two demons went and stood afar, waiting for the fighting to resume. Sri Vishnu began to fathom the reason why the two demons seemed to be indestructible. Then he knew that Sri Bhagavati had granted them the boon that they will die only when they desire it. That is the reason why they are so bold and arrogant, and it has become their goal to keep troubling me. I cannot cross the boon given by Sri Bhagavati, so I must find a way to make them desire death. That will be difficult because even a terminally ill man or one who has suffered misfortune does not desire death. Therefore, the only way is to prostrate at the lotus feet of the all-knowing, all-powerful goddess who readily responds to the prayers of her devotees. Even as he was contemplating this, that goddess whose resplendent form pleases her devotees appeared as Bhagavati Yoga Nidra in the heavens, where she had just withdrawn from the sleeping Vishnu. Sri Vishnu immediately recognized the goddess Bhuvaneshwari and began a stuti for the destruction of Madhu and Kaitabh. The Devi smiled and said, "Vishnu, you are the master of the universe. Now get prepared to fight the battle anew. These two demons can only be destroyed by deception. I will cause them to fall into illusion and delusion, and then you can vanquish them." Hearing these soothing and loving words, Sri Vishnu went back to continue the fight. The demons fought fiercely, and at one stage Sri Vishnu cast a glance at the Devi. She immediately laughed aloud. Her eyes became red, and from her eyes she slanted glances towards the demons. The glances were even more powerful than the arrows of Kamadev, god of love, and conquered the demons with the delusion of allurement. They were completely overcome by lustful and adulterous thoughts. They were completely overcome by the brilliance and effulgence of the form they beheld. Sri Vishnu, who is aware of the innermost emotions, recognized that the demons were under the illusion and confusion created by the Devi. He smiled and spoke to the demons thus: "O courageous and brave demons, ask for any boon you wish. I have fought with many demons from ancient times and have never met or seen any as strong and powerful as you two brothers. I am pleased. I will fulfill any desire you may have." Sootji says, the demons were filled with longing. Their eyes were fixed on the joy-giving form of Bhagavati Mahamaya. The haughty and conceited demon said, "We have not come to ask for favors. What can you give us? We are not suppliants. We are the benevolent givers. You can ask us for a boon. We are pleased with your performance in the war." Sri Vishnu said, "If you can give me a boon, grant that you accept your death at my hands." The demons were astounded and realized that they had been trapped. They looked around in despair. Suddenly, They saw that they were surrounded on all sides by the waters of the Bhavasagar. There was no land in sight. They got an idea. They said, "O Janardhan, you had also promised to grant us a boon, and you always honor your promise. Therefore, grant us also a boon. Kill us in a place completely dry and devoid of water. We accept our death at your hands, but you must fulfill our wish." The Lord Sudarshan beckoned his Sudarshan Chakra. Then he laughed aloud and said, "O fortunate ones, I am killing you on exactly such a place, dry and devoid of water." He lifted them out of water and showed them his lap, which was perfectly dry. He then said, "Now prepare to die, and henceforth both you and I will be known for honoring our promises." The two demons, whose bodies were 2 miles long, accepted their death. The Sudarshan Chakra cut off their heads, and their souls left their bodies. The whole ocean became diffused with their blood and marrow. From then on, the name of the earth became Medini. Sootji says, that is why eating of mud is prohibited. Munis, whatever you want to know, I have tried my best to narrate to you. From all this, it is clear that Vidya Swarupini Mahamaya should forever be worshipped. The greatest truth is that in all the 3 worlds, there is no one greater than Shri Bhagavati. The Vedas and Shastras bear testimony to this. Whether in Sagun, form, or in Nirgun, formless, this Parashakti must be worshipped. Chapter 1, Episode 10 to 13. The Tapasya of Ved Vyas and boon granted by Sri Shiva. The story of Raja Sudyumna being turned into a woman. Her stuti to the goddess, and the goddess granting her a place at her lotus feet. The rishis said, "Honorable Sootji, you have already mentioned that Vyasji was very competent and learned. He recited the entire Puranas to Sukhdev. By what tapasya did he gain Sukhdev as a son? In this connection, you were fortunate to hear the story from Vyasji himself. Please be kind and tell us exactly as you heard it." Sootji said, "Sukhdev was a yogi of the highest order. How he took birth as the son of Satyavati Nandan Vyas is what I am going to narrate to you. Many ages ago, Ved Vyas has a strong desire to have a son, and with this in his heart, he went to the area where holy men congregate on Mount Meru and started very austere penance. In his meditation, it occurred to him again and again that worship of the Devi is of paramount importance and absolutely necessary. He who does not worship the Devi is not worthy to exist in the world. The person who worships the Devi is exalted and worthy of respect." The place that Sri Vyasji selected for his penance had a most wondrous oleander grove with beautiful fragrant flowers of blackish red and yellow hues. Gods and ancient sages used to live in this grove. Also present were Aditya, Vasu, Rudra, Marut, Ashwini Kumars and others who had attained Brahma Sakshatkar, God realization. Divine music floated over the place. Gradually, the brightness of Ved Vyasji's radiance started spreading and it enveloped this earth. His locks began to glow like golden embers. Seeing this effulgence, Indra, god of the Devas, became perturbed. He went to Sri Shankar and entered into his presence. Sri Shankar observed, "O Indra, you are king of the Devas. How is it you are overcome with fear?" What is it that disturbs you? You should never have any misgiving, intolerance, or jealousy against tapasvis. Together with my Shakti, I am worthy of reverence, worship, and adoration. With full knowledge of this, the Munis are always immersed in meditation and tapasya. They have no unfriendly or injurious intentions towards any living being. After hearing these words of Sri Shankar, Indra asked, "Why is Vyasji performing this ghor tapasya, that is, formidable penance? What are his intentions?" Sri Shankar replied, "Ved Vyasa desires a son. That is why he is doing this difficult penance. He will soon complete 100 years of tapasya, then I will grant him a fine son." Sootji says, "Thus spoke Sri Shankar to Indra." Then Bhagwan Shankar went to Vyasji and said, "Vasavinandan Vyas, arise, O sinless one. You are going to receive the gift of a son who will be sinless, guiltless, brilliant, possessing wisdom of the highest order, who will have the knowledge of the self, who will gain extensive fame and win laurels, whose conduct will be faultless, whose communication will be sweet and pleasing, virtuous, valiant, upright, prowess belonging to the highest order according to the Puranas. He will be endowed with sattvic qualities and he will also be very pious." Sootji says, after hearing these most auspicious words in the Madhur Vani, sweet voice of Sri Shankar, Vyasji prostrated in obeisance and then proceeded to his ashram. After so many years of extreme penance, he was tired. Soon he began to ponder, in order to beget this son, there has to be a wife, and I do not have one. But how to acquire a wife? Because it can only mean getting shackled in chains. Whether a woman produces children or is chaste and observes moral rules, she is still a binding force. She will want all her desires and requirements to be fulfilled. A householder's life is full of problems. How am I to accept this situation? While he was thus musing, an Apsara called Gritachi assumed a divine form and appeared before him. Vyasji saw her, but the thought came to him that if he accepted her, all the host of Munis who were in different stages of tapas and meditation would make fun of him. However, marriage and household does give a lot of happiness. It is said that in the state of marriage, you receive the gift of children, you attain heaven, and once you get the knowledge of the self, you even get moksha. Long ago, he had heard Sri Narada's reasoning in this context. There was an Apsara called Urvashi who enchanted King Pururava. In the end, she abandoned him. The Munis requested Sootji. There is a story of how Ila gave birth to Pururava. Please narrate that to us. Sootji agreed. There was a king named Sudyumna. Never an untruth or false word came out of his mouth. He had full control of his senses and faculties of perception. One day, he mounted his horse and set out to hunt in the forest. He was accompanied by many ministers. He carried his splendid bow, Ajgav, and a quiver full of arrows. While hunting, King Sudyumna strayed into a singularly beautiful part of the forest, which was at the foothills of the holy Mount Meru. The beauty was enhanced by the delicate and fragrant parijat and other climbing plants bearing flowers. Also, there were trees like bakul, fragrant flowers, tarkul, flowers used as ear ornaments, tamal, evergreen, champa, magnolia, mahua, edible sweet flowers, vasanti, jasmine, malati, flowering creeper, jackfruit, mango, neem, and fruits like banana, coconut, and pomegranate. There were ponds with water lily and birds like cranes and swan. Continuous musical sounds came from a bamboo grove. Bumblebees were droning on the fragrant air. This forest was verily an abode of joy and peace, and Raja Sudyumna felt very gratified, so also his attendants. Then of course all of them entered into this wonderful forest. No sooner had they stepped in All of them were turned into women. Even the horses they were riding turned into mares. They were greatly distressed and began to run hither and thither, trying to understand what strange transformation had befallen them. The king was most distressed and wondered who had played this trick and how he could ever return to rule his kingdom. The puzzled rishi said, "Sootji, this is a most astonishing happening. King Sudyumna was such a righteous man, and the forest was so pleasing and bounteous. What could have happened for this kind of retribution? Please tell us." Sootji explained, "It was a long time ago that many rishis desired to have a darshan of Lord Shiva. When they entered, the Lord was in the company of Bhagavati Uma. On seeing the rishis, the goddess was filled with lajja, bashful modesty, and moved away from the Lord. Her entire being was trembling with shyness. Seeing this, the rishis realized that they had breached divine protocol and they rushed to Sri Narayan for refuge. Seeing his beloved Parvati blushing and diffident, Sri Shankar pacified her thus, "Don't be upset. To please you, I declare that any male who enters these forests out of allurement and spiritual ignorance will immediately be changed into a female. This is the ban imposed on this forest by Bhagavan Sri Shankar, and since then it has become a storehouse for men with flaws, shortcomings, and weaknesses. Since then, no being who has knowledge of this has ever made the mistake of entering this most tempting and alluring forest." Unfortunately, Raja Sudyumna was unaware of this, and in ignorance, he and his followers entered and had to suffer the consequence. Now the black clouds of despair engulfed the king. Being a woman, he could not return to his palace, and he and his followers began to wander here and there. His name was now changed to Ila. While still moving outside the forest, a young man by the name of Budh, son of Chandrama, met Ila. She was very beautiful and attended on by many women. Budh expressed his desire to make Ila his wife. Ila also wished to have him as a husband. They both married, and Ila gave birth to Pururava, son of Budh. After this, Ila was again troubled by thoughts of the palace. So she visited the guru of their dynasty, Kulguru Acharya Muni Vashisht. He was a very benevolent and compassionate guru and was moved by Ila's plight. He immediately started prayers and invocations to Sri Shankar. He was pleased by the eulogies of sage Vashisht, but he did not reverse the ban. He, however, made a concession. Raja Sudyumna would be a man for 1 month and a woman for 1 month in the future. After receiving this boon, the king returned to the palace. During the month that he was a woman, he stayed confined within the palace. During the time that he was a man, he ruled as a king. But soon his subjects reacted and could not accept such a repulsive situation. As soon as possible, he installed his son Pururava on the throne and retired to the forest. He visited Muni Narad and learned from him the Navakshar mantra of 9 syllables. He was filled with devotion and started chanting this holy mantra. Then the great goddess who grants deliverance and salvation to all was pleased. She gave darshan to the king. She was seated on a lion and was bedecked with ornaments. Her form was most pleasing and awe-inspiring. During this visit, the king was in the form of the woman Ila, and her eyes bloomed with happiness. With unbounded joy, she folded her hands and bowed in worship and began to sing praises to the goddess Jagadamba. Ila said, "O goddess Bhagavati, I am most blessed and fortunate to have received a glimpse of your universal divine form. You are verily the supreme goddess who looks after and guides the visible and invisible gods. You are bedecked with different ornaments of jewels and diamonds. It is your nature to give prosperity and rewards of penances. You open the gates of moksha for your devotees. I prostrate before you, O Jagadamba." When even the gods have not been able to adequately describe your magnificence, how can we ordinary mortals even attempt to comprehend your majesty? It is only by your glance that the true meaning of the scriptures becomes clear. O Devi, I am spellbound by your grandeur. The gods, Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh, Indra, Varun, Surya, Chandrama, Agni, Pavan, Kuber and the Vasus have not been able to completely comprehend all your glory and nature. How can we, who are lacking in virtues, even try to know who and what you are? O Mother, Sri Vishnu is noble and splendid, but he also is unaware of yourself and allows his feet to be rubbed by your manifest form as his Shakti, Satvik Swarup Sri Lakshmi, who looks after the wealth and well-being of this world. Similarly, Brahmaji knows you only in the form of Rajas Swarup Sri Saraswati, who destroys ignorance, and Shiva knows you as Tamas Swarup Sri Parvati. In comparison, I am ignorant and lacking in knowledge, and this wondrous gift of a vision of your immeasurable glory is beyond my comprehension. Bhavani, I am slowly beginning to understand your compassionate demonstration. It is your nature to be moved by unbounded faith and Ananya Bhakti, where there is no other. It was only when you assumed the form of Lakshmi that Sri Vishnu succeeded in killing the demons Madhu and Kaitabh. Then why does Sri Vishnu get his feet pressed by you? I understand. As you are radiant and effulgent like fire, he gets his feet purified by contact, so that he can uphold the universe and preserve dharma. Even when sage Bhrigu kicked Sri Vishnu on the chest, he was so full of yearning for Sri Devi that he did not get angry, just as the Ashoka tree does not get angry with the gardener who trims it to make it look beautiful. All the gods pay obeisance to Shri Hari, but he constantly meditates upon you. You reside on the couch of the bejeweled, expansive chest of Sri Vishnu, as inseparable as lightning within a gathering of clouds. Does this not mean that Sri Vishnu is your Vahana? Mother, if you separate from Sri Vishnu, performing puja to him will become impossible. It is evident that even if a person is honest, amiable, generous, peaceful and virtuous, if he does not have you residing in his heart, he is abandoned by all including brother and friend. O Devi of immeasurable power and majesty, please tell me, these gods like Brahma and others who are eternally adoring and paying homage to you, were they never women? I am convinced, O Devi, that they were once women and you turned them into men. O Mother, you have all the powers to make women into men and men into women. Please be merciful to me and make me into a man. The Devi was pleased and changed Ila into a man. Now Sudyumna prayed, O Devi, in my heart I know that you are neither male nor female, neither formless nor having a form. Whoever you are, whatever you are, I worship you incessantly and forever. Mother, it is my earnest desire that I may be worthy to worship you always. Sootji said, saying this, Sudyumna surrendered himself and took refuge at the lotus feet of the Devi. She granted him heaven in her divine abode, a place coveted even by the gods, from where there is no return. On the demise of Sudyumna, Pururava started ruling the kingdom. He was brilliant, upright and virtuous, and was always concerned about the well-being of his subjects. His kingdom, Pratishthan, was a happy and pleasant place. He was very tolerant and had knowledge of all dharmas. He was already blessed with godliness. Under his rule, Vedic prayers, charity, and gifts to holy men, discipline and transparency of administration were maintained. All castes and communities performed their respective rites at their ashrams in complete freedom. He himself performed manifold yagyas and distributed presents and donations. Seeing his image of royalty and grandeur, and hearing of his valor and virtues, Urvashi became attracted to him. She desired to make him her husband. The Apsara Urvashi had a curse upon her by Sri Brahma, which caused her to take birth as a mortal. She approached Pururava with a proposal for marriage but put two conditions. Firstly, he should take care of the two rams that she had and that she would eat only ghee every day. Also, she should never lay eyes on his unclad body. If any of these conditions were broken, she would immediately leave him. Pururava agreed and she lived with him, waiting for her release from the curse. The king was totally infatuated with Urvashi and thoughts of her began to rule his head and heart. It became impossible for him to be without her company even for a minute. Many years passed. Sri Indra began to miss Urvashi in Devlok. He called the Gandharvas and asked them to make efforts to get Urvashi back. He suggested they steal the rams from Pururava's place. He told them to use any means but to definitely bring Urvashi back as his court was dull without her. So, the Gandharvas and the demigods descended on the palace and stole the rams. But as they were ascending back to heaven, the rams began to bleat. Urvashi loved these rams like children, and when she heard them, she exclaimed to the king, "You promised to protect these rams who are as beloved as children to me. By putting my trust in you, I have been destroyed. You are just lying with your eyes closed like an impotent being." The king lost his senses and jumped out of bed and ran unclothed behind the thieves. It was pitch dark, but the Gandharvas caused a flash of lightning. Urvashi's eyes beheld the unclad king and immediately she disappeared. The Gandharvas abandoned the rams and left. The king managed to catch the rams and returned to the palace tired and weary. When he did not find Urvashi, he realized that she had gone forever. He kept wandering from place to place. His appearance became like that of a madman, and he roamed the earth looking for her. At last, he saw her in Kurukshetra and begged her to return as he could not exist without her. Urvashi said, "O king, you are very foolish. You have lost your sense of wisdom. Return to your palace. It is futile to be so dejected and sad." In spite of this, he continued to sink into the mire of attachment and suffered pangs of separation. Sootji said, "This is the story of Urvashi and Pururavas." Chapter 1, Episodes 14-15. The birth of Sukhdev, story of Sri Vishnu floating as a child on a banyan leaf. On seeing the beautiful Apsara, Gritadri, Vyasji fell into a quandary. He thought, "This celestial female is not compatible for me." He became so serious in his expression that the Apsara became fearful that he would put a curse on her. She immediately changed her form into that of a parrot and, trembling with fear, flew past him. Vyasji was puzzled to see this. Actually, when he first saw her, he was overcome with carnal desires for her. At that time, he was churning the arani, wooden instrument for creating fire. All of a sudden, he spilled his seed on the wood, but unaware of this, he continued churning. Out of this was born Sukhdev without conception. His appearance was as grand and auspicious as his father Ved Vyas. Just as the fire of a havan shines brightly on receiving oblations of Havi, so also the visage of Sukhdev began to dazzle and glow. Seeing this son, Ved Vyas's joy knew no bounds. He began to wonder what the significance of such a happening was. This was certainly the boon promised by Sri Shiva. The boy is the embodiment of Agni's splendor, light and beauty. Muni Vyas took a holy dip in the Ganges and returned to the summit of Mount Meru. The tapasvis on the mountain began to rain showers of flowers on the radiant boy. Ved Vyas performed all the prescribed ceremonies of consecration, purification and investiture with sacred thread. Vishwavasu, Narada, Tumburu and other Gandharvas and demigods were pleased. They came down from heaven and sang and paid homage to this divine child. From the heavens also descended Divya Kamandal, divine earthen pot, staff and the skin of a Krishna Mrug, black antelope. Sukhdev grew up and matured very fast, and as always, his face was radiant and glowing. Vyasji, who was an expert in sacred precepts and ceremonies, conducted the sacred thread initiation ceremony. Like his father, Sukhdev was also endowed with pure knowledge, and all the Vedas installed themselves within him with all their mysteries and secrets revealed. Sukhdev chose as his spiritual teacher the Guru Brihaspati. He fulfilled all the requirements of a Shishya, including the oath of Brahmachari. While in the Gurukul, he specialized in the knowledge of all scriptures and became conversant with rites, ceremonies, and sacred precepts. On completion, he took leave of his Guru by offering a token of gratitude. When he reached home, his father pressed him to his chest many times and took deep breaths of his forehead. Then, Samavartan was done, a Vedic rite performed on the return of a disciple to his household from his Guru's residence. Now Vyasji began to think of getting Sukhdev married. So one day, he approached his son. O sinless and guiltless one, you are now well versed in the Vedas and scriptures. You must get married and become a householder, thus pleasing the gods and ancestors. This will relieve me of Pitrashran, one of the 3 debts on a man from which he is freed when he begets a son. You are very intelligent and I have a lot of expectations from you. It is your filial duty to fulfill them. After severe penances, I was blessed to behold you. O constant and unborn one, you are of divine form. I am your father. Please look after me. Sootji said, having heard his father's words, this ascetic who had subdued all his passions spoke thus. Sukhdev said, Father, tell me, in this mortal world is there any happiness without sorrow? The learned ones do not term such a state as happy. Marriage will bring me under subjection to women. Once she gets me under her control, what freedom will I have? It is possible for a man to free himself of shackles of iron and steel, but it is impossible to get out of the bondage of wife and children. O twice born, the body functions and gives out excretions. A woman's body also does the same. Why would any man, aware of the truth, wish to enter into gratification with such a body? O Brahmin, I am unborn. Then why would I want to become a being that has its birth through the organ of generation? I do not wish to take birth again in the future. Why should I sacrifice the supreme joy of loving God for the odious and abhorrent carnal pleasures? Those who have experienced the bliss of spirit will never be tempted by material pleasures. My first step was to make a thorough study of the Vedas, but when I contemplated on them, I found conclusively that they supported slaughter and inclined the mind towards attachment to worldly objects in pursuit of religious performance to purify the mind. I chose Sri Brihaspati as my religious preceptor, but he was also continuously caught up in the ocean of duties enjoined for a householder. So, how could he guide me? When a physician is himself afflicted, how can he practice the art of healing? This was the situation in the case of my Guru. He is himself searching for the route to moksha. Oh, how dark and gloomy is the life of a householder. I bowed to my Guru respectfully and came back to you. My heart trembles at the thought of this venomous and poisonous existence. Please teach me the knowledge of the essences or principles of the elements and save me. I am orbiting this world of darkness like an assembly of planets. With this ceaseless movement, I am unable to find peace, tranquility, and repose. You will realize that there is no such thing as worldly happiness. The ignorant may claim that there is, but then they are like worms which find happiness in the soil where they belong. But those who have knowledge of the Vedas and scriptures and still maintain that there is happiness in the material world, they are the most foolish and unfortunate beings. Their birth is as insignificant and meaningless as that of a dog, donkey, or horse. After being born a mortal and getting an opportunity to acquire knowledge of the Vedas and Shastras, if a human being shackles himself with worldly bondages, then who deserves to get moksha? Woman is a threefold Maya. In this world, only he can be called as having crossed the ocean of illusion who has successfully detached himself from her shackles. No useful purpose is served in just having the knowledge and getting ensnared. I must study how to avoid it. Because of these fetters, Griha, family abode, has come to be called Graha, eclipse. Father, marriage has all the paraphernalia for bindings and attachments. I am in constant fear of this. Those who have no discrimination, those who are victims of fate, they have wasted this birth by opting for bondage. Vyasji replies, Son, marriage is neither a bondage nor the cause for bondage. A man can be a householder, but so detached that he is free. He uses his wealth, which has been constantly earned, as prescribed in the Vedas, for good purposes. If he performs rites for the honor of his ancestors, if he always speaks the truth, and if he maintains holiness and purity, he can get moksha even inside his house. After completing their posts, the brahmachari, the sannyasi, and the vanaprasth come for alms at midday, and it is the dharma of the householder to offer them food and speak to them with respect and concern. This gives them satisfaction. I do not know of, nor have I heard of any state which is more important than being a householder. The wise, experienced, and learned sage Vashisht and other acharyas have all been householders. O fortunate one, householders who live in accordance with the tenets of the Vedas can achieve the highest spiritual ascent, and all their desires and aspirations get fulfilled. Dharmic and knowledgeable men say that one should always observe the rules of one stage of life before entering the second and the third. So, it is advisable that you establish a home and endeavor to perform all the duties that it enjoins. Son, the secrets of dharma are not hidden from you. Enter the state of a householder, beget sons, and give happiness to your father and forefathers. Later on, you can renounce the world, go into the forest, and observe the austerities of vanaprastha life. Then, last of all, the ultimate existence of sannyas ashram can be observed. Son, heed my advice. Let us find a suitable bride for you, settle down as a householder, and you can live according to the Vedic principles. Sukhdev replied, Father, forgive me, but I cannot accept grihasthashram. It is comparable to a permanent bondage. Man is continually involved in the tensions of amazing wealth and never can recognize or experience joy. In the pursuit of material possessions, he harms and kills others. Even Indra has never been able to experience the complete happiness which is enjoyed by a beggar who is content with his freedom from desires and indifferent to the material wealth. Even if one gains the riches of the three worlds, he cannot experience the joy of detachment that a beggar feels. Indra is the king of Devalok, but when he sees a saint in meditation, he feels jealous and insecure. He becomes constantly engaged in efforts to put obstacles and hindrances and break the meditation. O fortunate one, I am your unconceived son. Then why are you pushing me into a world which is full of endless darkness, unhappiness, and sorrow? Birth, old age, and death, and again rebirth after occupying the unclean water of a womb are filled with gloom and sorrow. The evil that follows avarice and greed is more distressful and painful. Worse than death are cravings and addictions. When the family grows into father, mother, children, grandchildren, and all dependents, they all become instrumental in multiplying your responsibilities and problems. Father, the joy-giving pursuits are Yoga Shastra and Jnana Shastra, union of the self with the universal soul by means of meditation, one who seeks pure Nirmal Vidya and knowledge of yoga philosophy by sage Patanjali. Give me a commentary and interpretation of these secrets. There is a science of innumerable rituals, karma kand, but I am not interested in that. Blaming fate and destiny, hoarding to provide for a secure future, and worrying and toiling for present existence, these three activities come from ignorance and false knowledge. Teach me the way to neutralize and go beyond these actions and involvements. Sootji said, upon hearing these strong statements, Vyasji sank into waves of despair and began to wonder how to make a correct and positive decision. Sukhdev was shocked and amazed to see his father in such a pitiful state. He said, "O father, Maya has an overpowering influence. No wonder learned men who are proficient in these scriptures, who are religious instructors, and give discourses and quite authentically proved episodes from the Vedas, get swayed and lose their senses of discrimination and discretion. I am unable to understand the nature of this Maya. It must be something insurmountable, impossible, and difficult to overcome. If Satyavati Nandan Vyasji, who is possessed of the highest order of spiritual knowledge and wisdom, has got entangled in its chains. The most illustrious one, who is the narrator of the Puranas, the noble spirited one, who composed the Mahabharata, and the skilled one who was entrusted with dividing the Vedas, he also got captivated by this Maya. Even the creator, preserver, and destroyer have come under the illusion and confusion created by Maya Devi. Then how can anyone else in the three worlds escape? Undoubtedly, the strength and prowess of Maya Devi is awe-inspiring because even the all-powerful and omniscient Sri Vishnu was overcome and could not function in her absence. Vyasji is an Ansh Avatar, partial incarnation of Sri Vishnu, and yet he is being tossed around in the ocean of illusion like a sailor who has lost his boat. He has lost control and is weeping tears like an ordinary mortal. The power of Yoga Maya is strange and curious, and even the discerning cannot recognize and avoid it. Who is she? Who am I? And how did I come to be here? What strange illusion is this? This body is composed of 5 elements. It has the propensity for relationships like father, son, and others. This can deceive even fraudulent and artful beings and is undoubtedly an infinite and boundless energy, possessed of unlimited capability. It has caused even Brahman Devata Ved Vyasji to shed tears from his eyes. Sootji said, Yoga Maya is the supreme causal of all causes. All the gods emanated from her. Even Sri Brahma is under her control. Sukhdevji worshipped Bhagavati Yogamaya in his heart and offered pranams. His father had been reduced to a pitiable state. He was sinking into an ocean of sorrow. Sukhdevji spoke words that would be benevolent for his father. O fortunate one, you are the legitimate son of Parasharji, begotten by a wife who was of his own tribe. It is your nature to impart divine knowledge to all. Then why are you sinking into despair like an ordinary, illiterate, and ignorant mortal? Today I am your son, but no one knows what I was in my previous birth and what you were. Why should a learned and illustrious teacher like you fall into this trap of Maya? Use your wisdom with gravity and fortitude. It is not right to contaminate your mind with dejection and sorrow. Just recognize these father-son relationships as a web of illusion. O Muni, you are knowledgeable and the embodiment of virtue and wisdom. With your religious prowess, remove my ignorance so that I can be freed from the fear of taking birth through human process. This earth is karma bhumi and one does not always merit a human birth. And then, if one is born in the house of a Brahmin of a high order, then it is a rare and unique event. But I feel captured and bound, and I am unable to get rid of this connection. When the mind gets caught in the worldly web, then it is the patriarch who is answerable. Sootji said, Sukhdevji was extremely wise. His demeanor was peaceful. In his mind, he was already detached, a sannyasi. Hearing these words from his worthy and capable son, Vyasji said, Son, you are very blessed and fortunate. I have written Devi Bhagavath. You make a study of it. It is equal to the Vedas. It has 5 features of immeasurable value and it is divided into 12 chapters. In my opinion, this is the decoration and embellishment of all the Purans, meaning it is preeminent, excellent, and most superior. Just from listening to it being read, one gets the power of discretion and the ability to judge right from wrong. You must study Devi Bhagavath. Once, Sri Vishnu found himself as a small child floating on a banyan leaf. He began to wonder, why have I turned into a child? Which divine being has caused this to happen to me? To accomplish which task have I been created thus? Out of what substance have I been formed? How will I obtain knowledge of all these things? Sri Vishnu was pondering thus when Sri Bhagavati Yogamaya allayed all his fears. She uttered, in the most beautiful voice, the half shlok which unravels the mystery of the object of a human being's creation and existence. I am this entire creation. There is no other indestructible or imperishable object but me. Sarvam kalvidamevaham nanyadasti sanatanam. On hearing this awesome declaration, the first thing that happened to Sri Vishnu was that he understood it in its entirety. Then he began to wonder, from whose Vani, voice, has this awesome declaration emanated? Is the speaker a male or a female or neither? What must I do to have a glimpse of this being? Even as he was contemplating, he enthroned the Divine Mother in his heart. He kept repeating the half shlok again and again. He became engrossed in it, but his curiosity had not left. He lay down on the leaf. When his attention became tranquil and thoughtless, then the Devi Yogamaya appeared before him. She manifested her divine form of 4 arms bearing conch, chakra, mace and lotus. Her clothes were shining. Necklaces of pearls and other jewels were added to her splendor. She was accompanied by her attendants. Her face was beautiful. With a smile on her radiant face, she stood before Sri Vishnu, the Devi Mahalaskhmi herself. Sootji says, all around was the vast ocean. On seeing this resplendent form of the Devi so suddenly, the lotus-eyed Sri Vishnu was astonished. Surrounding her were her other aspects, all seated on thrones: love, affection, intelligence, prosperity, intellect, dignity, fame, memory, understanding, faith, prudence, purity, hunger, thirst, sleep, compassion, movement, contentment, forgiveness, modesty, deep sleep, rest, satisfaction. They all carried weapons for destroying negativities. They were all adorned with jewels, garlands of sweet-smelling parijat flowers, and necklaces of pearls enhanced their beauty. Sri Vishnu began to wonder, who are all these female forms? And who am I on this leaf of banyan? When there is only Bhavasagar all around, how did this leaf appear? And which unknown power has caused me to become a little child lying on this leaf? Who is this form before me? Which undefinable power has placed this indescribable scene before me? Now what should I do? Should I go somewhere? Or should I remain here in this innocent childlike form? Chapter 1, Episode 16 to 17. Conversations between Shri Vishnu and Shri Mahalaskhmi, and between Shri Vishnu and Shri Brahma. Sukhdev's visit to Mithilapuri to meet Raja Janaka. Vyasji says, on seeing Shri Vishnu in a state of indecision, Shri Mahalaskhmi smiled and spoke thus. Vishnu, why are you so amazed and astonished? Because of the influence of Bhagavati Mahashakti, you are not able to recognize me. Long before this, the cycles of creation and dissolution have been going on in rotation, and in every cycle you have taken incarnations. That Parashakti is attributeless, devoid of the qualities and attributes of the mind, beyond the gunas and nadis. You are Sagun Parabrahma, endowed with qualities and attributes. You bear the duality of heat and cold, Ida and Pingala nadis, and you stand on Sattva Guna to protect the three worlds. Actually, I am also Sagun Shakti. It should be understood that I am verily Sattvic Shakti. Shortly from the lotus of your Nabi, Prajapati Brahma is going to use the energy of Rajoguna and cause the universe to be created. When he attains tapasya, he will be endowed with paramount power and energy. Then he will succeed in creating the three lokas or worlds. Brahma will possess and maintain Rajoguna, one of the three constituent qualities of living beings. Being possessed of prodigious and extraordinary knowledge and prowess, Brahma will create Panchabhutas, the five elements, earth, water, fire, air and ether. Then he will create their generative powers within them. Then he will create the deities who will mobilize these forces. And finally, he will create the soul with adequate aptitude and discretion to know what is proper to be done according to his design. For this reason, he has the attribute of Karta, Creator. Most auspicious one, you are entrusted with the protection of this created universe. When you are enraged and scowl with fury, from between your eyebrows will incarnate Rudra. He will be endowed with Tamasic Shakti. At the end of the day of Brahma, consisting of 432 crore mortal years, he will cause the final annihilation or destruction. I have come so that you can perform this act of protection of the universe. Consider yourself endowed with my Sattvic Shakti. Madhusudan, I will abide here. Your Anahat is my abode. I will always be with you. Shri Vishnu spoke, Devi, a short while ago I heard a half shlok. Its syllables were exceedingly lucid and clear. O most divinely beautiful Devi, please tell me whose voice made that supremely consummate revelation. My mind is agitated, like a penniless man keeps recollecting and imagining wealth in the same way that sound repeatedly echoes in my mind. Vyasji says, on hearing Shri Vishnu's words, the Devi's countenance shone with delight. Devi Lakshmi smiled with affection and love and said, Listen, O Vishnu, I will tell you. I am verily the four-armed goddess, possessed of attributes, Saguna. This is my form. Do you not know Adya Shakti? She appears with all her attributes withdrawn within herself. O fortunate one, know this. It is this Nirgun, attributeless Bhagavati, whose supreme voice you heard proclaiming the Artha Shlok. This should be recognized and worshipped as the supremely pure Devi Bhagavath. This auspicious Puran gives benediction and it reveals the mysteries of the Vedas. O vanquisher of negative forces, O inviolable and steadfast ascetic, Bhagwan Vishnu, I offer respects to the gracious compassion of Devi Bhagavati, who has specially revealed the secrets of the techniques of the divine. From Sakshat Mahavidya herself, we have received articulated knowledge of the science of the scriptures, the divine nectar from her lotus feet. There is no other truth in existence which is greater than this in the Trilok, three worlds. The Devi is pleased with you. That is why she has articulated and manifested the mystery to you. Vyasji says, on hearing this utterance by Bhagavati Mahalaskhmi, Sri Vishnu absorbed, enshrined and retained this great mantra in his heart. Sometime later, Sri Brahma, who had taken form out of the lotus of Sri Vishnu's Nabhi, arrived in the state of fear for refuge at the feet of Sri Vishnu. It was then that Sri Vishnu engaged in a terrible combat and defeated the demons Madhu and Kaitabh. Then he chose an auspicious moment and went into deep meditation on the supremely pure Artha Shlok. Sri Brahma watched Sri Vishnu with great joy and satisfaction. He questioned Sri Vishnu, Jagadishwar, you are venerated by all the gods, O Deva with lotus eyes. Then whose praise are you chanting? Which being exists who is more superior to yourself, who commands your worship, and who is that whose praises fill your heart with joy? Sri Vishnu said, the causal of all actions, the Shakti within you and me, which possesses every quality, trait, capability, characteristic, nature, that Shakti is the embodiment of benevolence, Bhagavati Adya Shakti, the one who supports the universe and who keeps it stable and firmly established in this ocean of illusion, who is brilliantly enthroned and who, in her manifest form, is the universe, who appears in her great splendor for the benevolence of her devotees and the one who loves her devotees as her children. It is that Mahashakti, Devi Bhagavati, who has incarnated. She is supremely generous. She is the source and embodiment of knowledge. She is eternal, ever-present, continuous. She emerges for a divine purpose for the protection of her creation. She is the power of consciousness that dispels ignorance and confusion. She cuts the knot of Maya. Then one perceives the unreality of individuality. O Brahman, embodiment of purity, know that you, I, and every living being have been created by Chitta Shakti, pure attention of this same Bhagavati. There should be no doubt on this. That which the Devi has pronounced in a half shlok will in the beginning of the third be clearly evident and will become renowned as Devi Bhagavath. Vyasji says, Sri Brahma was seated on the lotus of Sri Vishnu's Nabhi and there he learned the half shlok. After that, he gave knowledge of it to his son Narada of immeasurable intelligence. Then the privilege of elucidating and putting it down in 12 chapters came to me, O favored one. You must make a complete study of this great Puran, which is comparable to the Vedas. It is full of excellent accounts of favors granted by Devi Jagadamba. Every part of it is filled with the essences of divine philosophy. Among all Purans, it is preeminent. In holiness, it compares with Dharma Shastras, the laws of Dharma. It is full of the doctrines of the Vedas. It also records the destruction of Vritasura and a host of other episodes. Emerging out of the mundane world of earthly existence, it is the storehouse of Brahmagyan, Nirmal Vidya, and an ocean of liberation and deliverance. O son, you are possessed of unparalleled wisdom. which makes you worthy of respect and reverence. Make an earnest and diligent study of this most superb Puran. It contains 18,000 shlokas. It removes ignorance, and under its influence, the intelligent and knowledgeable Surya begins to glow exceedingly. This praiseworthy Puran bestows peace and happiness both on the listeners and the orators, and grants long life and the blessings of children and grandchildren. Sootji is a holy man, and along with you, he will also make a study of the auspicious and sacred Puran. Sootji says, after speaking thus, Vyasji began to instruct both Sukhdevji and me. Whatever extensive description, expansive commentary, and detailed explanations that he gave, I carefully memorized. I stayed in the most holy and purifying ashram till the completion of the instructions. But Sukhdevji could not find peace in his heart. He began to live in seclusion but could not reduce the turmoil within. It was as if he was floundering. He had no inclination to eat food or to fast. Seeing his son in this disturbed state, Vyasji inquired of him, "Son, why are you constantly in a pensive mood? You appear like a penniless man who is always in fear of indebtedness and obligation. I am your father. If you cannot find peace in what I have advised, then I suggest you to go to Mithilapuri, the kingdom of Raja Janaka. He is virtuous, saintly, he speaks the truth and honors his promise. He is free from worldly bondage, and he is Videha, one who is detached and thus established in the witness state. He will remove your doubts, apprehensions, and ignorance. Go to him and solve your problems. Also, get from him the knowledge of the tenets prescribed for the caste to which a person belongs. Most respected Janakji is free from worldly bondage, possessed of Brahma Gyan, holy, pious, truthful, ever peaceful, and constantly in yoga." Sootji says, Vyasji is noble and splendid, and after hearing him speak, his son Sukhdevji said, "O Dharmatman, righteous man, it strikes me as hypocrisy and feigned piety that a person enjoying the royal life like King Janaka can be called Jivan Mukti, free from bondages. How can a person who governs and rules have a detached attention? Now I must meet him, as I am curious to see how he can remain detached like the lotus leaf which does not get wet even though it stands in water. Father, how can a person who has eaten still be unfed, or a person who has performed an action be a non-doer? How can your generative power be separate from you? How can there be sameness between mother, son, wife, women of low morals? If the tongue knows the different tastes of sweet, salt, sour, bitter, how can there be detachment from food? When one knows the difference between friend and foe, then naturally the emotions of love and hate will follow. These are the questions that are tormenting me. How can Raja Janak have these interactions and still be detached? Is there no disparity between the mind of a robber and an ascetic? If there is, then where the freedom from bondage? Father, I have not yet seen a king who is liberated from worldly bondage, and Raja Janak is also a grihasti, householder. This doubt assails my mind. I have a powerful desire to remove these misgivings, so I must go to Mithilapuri. Sootji says, after paying obeisance to his father and touching his feet, Sukhdevji prepared for his departure. He promised his father Vyasji that on reaching Mithila he would do exactly as directed by him. He would observe how Raja Janak rules without the law of corporal punishment, because once the rules are lifted, observance of discipline and dharma is not possible. It is fear of punishment that helps preserve righteousness. That is why I am unable to understand how Raja Janak has been able to maintain law without punishment all these years. It is almost as if someone is saying, "This mother of mine is very venerable." Father, you are a great tapasvi. I wish to put before you my heartfelt thoughts and doubts before I leave for Mithila. Sootji says, the desire to go to Mithila had become very strong. Seeing how strongly Sukhdev was grounded in his principles, Vyasji embraced him and said, O son Sukhdev, may you always be blessed. May you live long. Having so solemnly declared yourself, you may live in peace. After your visit, you must return to my ashram. Do not go to any other place. Seeing you gives me joy. If you remove yourself from my sight, it will give me great pain. After meeting Raja Janaka and clarifying your doubts and uncertainties, come back and continue your study of the Vedas. Sootji says, Sukhdevji prostrated at his father's feet, did a perambulation around him and left with such speed and energy. It was like an arrow leaving the bow. On his journey, he passed through many prosperous and flourishing cities, forests, trees, fields ripe for harvest, saw aesthetics deep in meditation, yagya hosts offering sacrifices, yogis absorbed in the practice of asceticism according to the rules of yoga philosophy, beings who had renounced their homes and entered Vanaprastha, the third stage in the life of a twice born, devotees of Sri Shiva, sun worshippers and devotees of Sri Vishnu. Passing all this and observing the various forms of worship, Sukhdevji crossed Mount Meru, the Himalayas, and reached Mithilapuri. What he saw was wealth and prosperity, and people who were happy and satisfied, and a high standard of morality and virtuous conduct. The guard at the gate asked who he was and why he had come. Sukhdevji did not reply but entered the gateway and stood unshaken and motionless like a tree whose branches had been amputated. He was filled with amazement. He had a smile on his face but continued to stand silent and immobile. The guard said, Brahmin, I hope you are not dumb. What is the reason for your coming here? According to my understandings, no one goes anywhere without a reason. Brahman, once you get permission from our king, you may enter the city. Neither a person of low caste nor one of virtuous disposition has authority to enter without permission. O praiseworthy one, no doubt you seem to be a noble and illustrious scholar versed in the Vedas. Be so kind as to tell me the clan or lineage you belong to, as well as the purpose of your visit, and you may enter the city at will. Sukhdevji said, O guard of the gates, you are not at fault. You are always dependent and servile. It is your first and foremost duty to please your master. Through you, I have been detained. Even your king is not to blame, because it is the duty of wise and experienced people to differentiate between thieves and enemies before interacting with them. The guard said, Brahman, what is happiness and what is sorrow? What should a prosperous and auspicious person do? Who is a benevolent well-wisher and who is an enemy? Please be kind and answer all my queries. Sukhdevji said, Duality and duplicity pervades the length and breadth of this world. This is because some people are passionate extroverts and others are recluses and ascetics, averse to worldly pleasures. Even their determinations and resolves are of two kinds. Ascetics also have differences, known, unknown, or stupid. The wise have two kinds of knowledge, acquainted with the Shastras or their own limited beliefs and understanding. Both competent and incompetent people use their intelligence to fulfill their desires and inclinations in any way possible. The guard said, O twice born, you are most superior. I am devoid of subtle knowledge. Whatever you said, I am not able to understand. Please tell it to me again in clear, simple detail. Sukhdevji said, Whoever has desires and longings and works towards fulfilling them, he is an extrovert. He has to go through happiness and pain. He gets his happiness and satisfaction after acquiring wife, children, wealth, fame and victory. If he fails in getting these, he becomes very unhappy. The quest for absolute joy for self-realization is considered the most desirable activity. He who puts obstacles in the path should be considered an enemy. The self-centered man who pursues worldly pleasures is often counted as a friend. But he who is untouched by the illusory world is the wise one. The foolish man gets deceived by the unreal and always lives in delusion and confusion. To be detached from the unreal world and to become engrossed in the dharmas of the inner self gives absolute joy. Those who pursue outward knowledge, who acquire proficiency in worldly matters, are only threading the path of trouble, sorrow, and disappointments and disillusion. To the wise and auspicious man, passion, desire, anger, jealousy, conceit, and attachment are all considered enemies to spiritual ascent. Peace and satisfaction are his companions. There is no greater benevolence in the three worlds. Sootji says, on hearing these words of wisdom, the guard realized that this was a holy and learned Brahmin. He invited Sukhdev to enter the grand mansion that was the palace. As he entered the gates, Sukhdev began to observe the citizens. The streets were filled with people. There were shops full of precious gems and jewels, and there were people selling and people buying, and a general air of abundance and prosperity. Seeing this display of wealth and opulence surprised Sukhdevji, but he continued walking. His countenance was so radiant, it glowed like the sun. When he reached the palace, the guards there also stopped him. He stopped and stood as motionless and inert as a block of wood, and went deep into contemplation and meditation. Very soon, ministers from the palace stood before him with folded hands and escorted him to the royal guest house. It was surrounded by trees bearing divinely fragrant flowers. He was given an honorable reception according to custom. The most skillful and competent musicians and dancers from the king's court were there to entertain him. They were well versed in the art of entertainment, and after instructing them to fulfill all the requirements of the guest, the minister departed. Sukhdev was all alone, and these ladies considered it their paramount duty to please him. They put before him delicious meals and the best fruits of the season. Then the ladies of the inner chambers took him on a final tour of the gardens. They were enamored of him. He was very handsome and spoke in beautiful tones. They recognized him as a chaste and virtuous person and maintained a delicate decorum around him. To Sukhdevji, all these ladies were as sisters or mothers. For a person whose attention is always on the self, such situations can give neither pleasure nor mental agony. He continued to be in thoughtless state. The ladies prepared a luxurious bed for him and spread costly drapes on it. Sukhdevji washed his feet, carefully took the kusha grass in his hand, and gave notice of evening prayers. He passed the first quarter of the night in prayer and meditation. Then he retired and slept for the second and third quarter of the night. He awoke at the fourth quarter, Brahma Muhurtam, and meditated. Then he had his bath, performed the prayers enjoined to be made by the twice born, and completed his morning duties. Chapter 1, Episode 18 to 19. The meeting between Sukhdevji and Raja Janaka. Sootji says, when Raja Janaka heard of the arrival of his Guru Putra, son of Ved Vyas, he arrived at the guest house accompanied by his council of ministers. He gave him a courteous welcome, seated him on a special asan, and made his enquiries about his well-being. A milch cow was presented according to the custom. Sukhdev ji acknowledged the reception and accepted the gift with grace. Then he also inquired about the king's health and well-being. After he took his seat and settled into calm repose, Raja Janaka asked him, "Son of my Guru, you are honorable and dignified and free from wish or desire. Do me the honor of telling me the reason that we are favored with a visit from you." Sukhdev ji said, "Maharaj, you are preeminent among kings. My father Vyas ji has advised me to get married as the state of matrimony is considered the highest. But to me, it appears like a binding force and I refused. He explained that it is not an entrapment, but I still resisted. My mind got entangled in manifold assumptions and fears. Sensing this, Vyasji suggested that I come to Mithila and speak to you. He described you as a dharmic king who conducts yagyas, sacrifices, and as one who is freed from the bondages of worldly life. The title of Videha, detached attention, has been conferred on you by all who know you. He said you rule unobstructed and have no foes or enemies. Even while ruling the country, you are untouched by the luxuries which surround you. He said that after interacting with you, all my skepticism and fanciful misgivings would be removed. A meeting with Raja Janaka will convince you that all your fears are baseless and that you are groping in darkness and obscurity. In obedience to my father's advice, I have come to Mithila to seek your guidance and advice. You are pure and sinless. Tell me what I should do to become free from worldly bondages." O King, there are various resources and means of devotion, penance, renunciation, austerity, visits to holy shrines and sacred places of pilgrimage, fasting, sacrifice, taking up residence in holy lands, continuous and regular study of the sacred scriptures. To which of these should I resort for divine protection and safe harbor? Please give me your valuable advice." Raja Janaka said, "For a seeker who embarks on the road to moksha, it is imperative that he should conform to certain requirements. He should wear the sacred thread after the prescribed investiture ceremony. Then he must take up residence at the feet of his Guru. He must make a complete study of the Vedas and scriptures. At the conclusion of his education, he must offer the prescribed Guru Dakshina, token of gratitude to the Guru, before departing his ashram. When the disciple returns to his own household from his Guru's residence, he should be received with the customary rites. Then he should enter the state of Grihasti, enter the state of marriage and become a householder. He must keep control of the jurisdiction of his mind. There is no alternative injunction or precept. He must always strive to keep others happy. He must have no expectation from others, not allow sinful thoughts to linger. He should perform Agni Hotra, ceremony consisting of offering oblations to the sacred fire. Always speak the truth and remain ever pure and chaste. After begetting children and grandchildren, he must enter the third stage of Vanaprastha, renunciation. He must conquer the Shadripus, the 6 enemies not conducive to meditation, namely anger, desire for sensual pleasures, attachment, mamatva, temptations, conceit and jealousy. Finally, he must entrust his wife into the care of his son, pledge all his faculties and enter the state of total surrender and asceticism, the fourth state in the life of a Dvija or twice born. He must never stray from the path of dharma, maintain a peaceful and tranquil state of mind, uncorrupt and free from worldly desires. Only such a person can be termed an ascetic. If he is not detached, he should never enter the last state. This truth has been proclaimed in the Vedas and no one can violate it. Sukhdev ji, The Vedas prescribe 48 purification rites. Out of these, our learned ancestors have apportioned 40 for the Grihast, householder. In addition, the balance 8 are for those who are spiritually inclined and desirous of liberation from worldly existence. It gives tranquility, bliss, control over senses, self-restraint. It is the advice and direction of sages that step by step one must go from one ashram to another, one stage to the other. Sukhdev asked, if one gains mastery over sense perceptions and worldly desires and acquires the secret knowledge for liberation, is it compulsory for him to still go through the different stages like householder, or can he retire to the forest as an ascetic? Raja Janaka said, O praiseworthy one, it is extremely difficult to conquer the power of the senses. With the slightest lapse in attention, it enters the consciousness and creates thoughts and desires. After renouncing the world, if one still feels urges for tasty food, soft comfortable bed, sense pleasures, longing for progeny, how can he silence these desires? Desires cannot be destroyed. They are very enduring. Therefore, the impulses have to be overcome by degrees, step by step. You have to experience and then overcome. Like a man who sleeps at a height would experience the fall at some time or the other, but the man who sleeps on the floor has no possibility of falling. After entering the ascetic stage, if anything corrupts, pollutes or defiles it, then there is no other recourse for the ascetic in this lifetime. It is known as Bhrashta Sthiti. An ant starts its journey from the roots of the tree and gradually, step by step, reaches the branches and ultimately the fruits. Whereas a bird, in an effort to avoid meeting obstacles, flies with great speed. The result is that the bird becomes weary and tired while the ant enjoys in comfort. There is no shortcut to reaching the goal of self-liberation. Step by step, one has to conform to the stage of life you are in and gradually gain mastery over the mind. Even within the householder stage, one can be at peace and not allow any thoughts to disturb their attention. Reflect or contemplate on the Atma, the Self. There should be no reaction, no happiness in good fortune, and no sorrow in misfortune. Any thoughts that disturb the peace of mind should be dropped or surrendered, and only prescribed activities should be performed. The joy of meditation on the Supreme Being should be felt in the heart. Such a person undoubtedly gets release from the troubles and perplexities of worldly life. O sinless one, see how I rule a kingdom, and yet I am free and untouched. I act according to my conscience, but I am not attached to the action or the result. Just as I partake of various forms of nourishment and perform myriad tasks and still remain untouched and detached, so also you must strive to become free. I have told you all the causes of attachment. If you go beyond the cause, then there is no effect. The 5 elements are made of matter and have no power or influence over the Atma, spirit. Atma is immaculate, pure, inconceivable, incomprehensible, sinless. It can only be experienced, not perceived through the senses. Then how can it come under any influence or bondage? O twice born one, the cause of our sinking into this deep and unfathomable ocean of illusion is the mind. Once the mind becomes clean and pure, all the turbulence caused by the senses gets destroyed and neutralized. One may go and take endless dips in holy waters, but till the mind is washed clean, it is of no avail. O Brahmin of subdued senses, that which puts one into bondage is not the body, soul, or senses. It is the mind which binds and the mind which releases. Atma is eternally pure and the embodiment of detachment. If there is no mental activity, then the causes of bondage cease to exist. Friends, enemies, sadness, rejection are all figments of the mind. Atma is singular. As long as man is conscious of his individuality as body and mind, he cannot identify with Atma or spirit. Atma is the embodiment of Brahma. I am that eternal Brahma without doubt. There is so much ignorance and false knowledge in the world. Because of this, one feels multiplicity between Atma and Brahma, and the attention is fragmented. This avidya or false knowledge can be neutralized only if one gets Brahma Gyan, knowledge of Brahma on the central nervous system. Therefore, it is judicious for the sage and the philosopher to acquire Brahma Gyan or Nirmal Vidya, pure knowledge. Just as you cannot appreciate the cool comfort of shade until you stand in the sun, so also, unless there is a backdrop of false knowledge, you cannot recognize the excellence and benevolence of Nirmal Vidya. It is a natural phenomena to have variations within moods, energies with elements, and sense pleasures within situations or circumstances. The Vedas, which tend and train all of us, have laid down limits of decorum and boundaries of good conduct. If man does not conform to these prescriptions, then atheists and skeptics will wipe out authority and dharma will go out of existence. There will be a breakdown of statutes and laws, and the very existence of humankind will be threatened. Therefore, those who abide by the value systems of the Vedas will inherit the kingdom of God. Sukhdev ji said, "O king, there is one question that is constantly troubling me. How can one who is surrendered on all sides by Maya be free from longings and desires? Even though one has studied the scriptures and has a sense of discretion between the eternal and the transient, man still gets entangled in the web of Maya. Then how can he claim to be free? Knowledge of the scriptures is not powerful enough to dispel the ignorance of the heart. Just having knowledge of lamps does not dispel darkness. Our wise elders have always directed that we maintain alliance and friendship with all living beings. How is it possible for a householder to observe this? O king, the yearning for wealth, the comforts and luxuries of a royal life, victories in war, and desire for fame will constantly be crowding your mind. So, how can you be free from worldly attachments? You use guile to trap a thief. You are righteous and virtuous in the company of ascetics, and you can of course discriminate between friend and foe. So where is the detachment from qualities? You have knowledge of taste, sweet, salt, sour, bitter, pungent, and astringent. Then where is the conquest over the senses? Also, you know the difference between good and evil. That is, you derive joy from good deeds and abhor evil. You experience all the three states, waking, dreaming, and sushupta, deep slumber. Then how can you be in the single state of balance at all times? You are the acknowledged master of your army, elephants, horses, and infantry. You eat delicacies. Bland and tasteless food is not relished. Then how can a garland and a snake appear no different in your sight? A liberated and emancipated being is one to whom a clod of earth and a lump of gold appear no different from each other, and who is always engaged in activities benevolent to others. Therefore, I have no desire to live the life of a householder even for a moment. My mind is resolved. I will live in seclusion, silence my desires, and live in peace and tranquility. I will live in the company of any living thing. I will give up all attachments. I will eat fruits or flowers or leaves or anything that I get. I will cease to experience happiness or sorrow, and I will not collect or amass material objects. I will wander freely just like antelope and deer. O king, when the desire for renunciation has already awakened within me, and all my moods of happiness and sorrow have been silenced, then what is the purpose of my entering the state of a householder with house, possessions, beautiful wife, and other entrapments? You are constantly speaking and thinking of various situations and things, and still say that you are liberated from worldly attachments. I feel I am being deceived. You are beset by concerns and problems relating to enemies, to wealth and treasures. What makes you any different from the rishis and munis who live in the forest, eat frugally, who are steadfast in their meditation, who are fully aware that this world is an illusion and yet get ensnared in the web of attachments? By virtue of birth, the members of your clan get the title Videhi, one whose attention is totally detached. This is a very contradictory practice. It is just the same as giving the title Vidyadhar, bearer of knowledge, to an illiterate man, or naming a blind man Divakar, bearer of light, or a pauper being called Lakshmidhar, bearer of wealth. It has no meaning. It is nonsensical. Raja Janaka spoke thus: O twice born, what you have spoken is the truth. There is no lie in it. But still, hear this. My Guru Vyasji is worthy of the utmost honor and respect. Agreed that you do not wish to live with him and you want to go into the forest. But in the forest, you will have to live and keep alliance with deer and antelope. This is a fact. When there is no place devoid of the 5 elements, where on this earth can you remain without attachments? Hunger pangs will make themselves felt at some time or other. How then will you remain unconcerned? When and how will you satisfy the longing to eat? You will keep an eye on your staff and deer skin, in the same way that I keep a watch on my kingdom. I never get over anxious or excessively worried about its affairs. I have surrendered all anxieties and concerns, mistakes and doubts. I am in absolute joy, eating or sleeping. The world cannot bind me. If you are always in fear that I am caught in this worldly web, this thought itself will cause you sink into self-doubt and distress. Therefore, be always alert, watchful and cautious. It is our responsibility to surrender these fears and live in confidence and joy. I am this body, are the chains which bind. I am not this body is the release. It is this I consciousness and the sense of ownership that ensnares and entraps one into worldly attachments. Attachment does not come out of the body or the home. It comes from self-conceit and possessiveness. Sootji says, Raja Janaka's words made a deep and favorable impression on Sukhdevji. They allayed all his doubts and misapprehensions. He immediately took leave of Raja Janaka and set off for Vyas ashram. Seeing his son returning home, Vyasji was overjoyed. He received him with fatherly love, made him sit on his lap, breathed over his head and inquired after him. From that day onwards, Sukhdevji lived in the beautiful ashram. He was already well versed in the Vedas and scriptures. After witnessing the tranquil and balanced state in which Raja Janaka maintained himself in spite of ruling a kingdom, Sukhdev found peace in his heart, and he decided to continue living in the ashram. He got married to a beautiful girl from his clan. Her name was Pivari. They had 4 sons and a beautiful daughter called Kirti. She was given in marriage to King Vibraj. Her son, Brahmadatta, was a very wise and illustrious king. He was very fortunate that Sri Narada himself imparted Brahma Gyan, knowledge of Brahma, to him. After reaching the zenith of knowledge, Brahmadatta handed over his kingdom to his son and retired to Badarikashram, a place of pilgrimage in the Himalayas. Sukhdev also took sannyas, life of an ascetic, and went and settled on the beautiful peak of Mount Kailash. He spent his days in resolute and undisturbed contemplation of the self and meditation on the divine. One day, shining like the sun, he ascended into the heavens. As his asana, seat, left the mountain, it split asunder and many other happenings took place. All this was witnessed by the meditating rishis and munis, and they all began to sing hymns in his praise. The entire sky was bright with this second sun shining in it. Ved Vyas was very sad at this parting and kept lamenting, my son, my son. Seeing the pitiable condition of his father, Sukhdevji made a reply. Hearing the sound of his voice, The rishis and munis knew that he had already been released from his mortal body and had merged with the universal soul. Up to date, his voice can be heard in clear, lucid tones. Vyasji was inconsolable and kept grieving for his son. Dark clouds of mourning loomed overhead. Sri Shiva, the ever-compassionate god, came down from Kailash and appeared before Vyasji. Sri Shiva consoled him. Vyas, do not grieve. Your son Sukhdev is a vast receptacle of knowledge of the Vedas and the Yoga Shastras. He has been granted the highest state, which even the most steadfast souls do not achieve easily. You yourself are wise and learned. Therefore, you should not have any worries regarding your son. By having a son like Sukhdev, you have earned renown and fame. Vyasji said, O God of gods, what shall I do? I have become destitute and helpless. My eyes long for a glimpse of him and I am floundering. The Lord said, That which completely absorbed your son and enamored him can be found as a reflection in very close proximity to yourself. Discover it and you will find peace and tranquility. Sootji says, Very soon after that, Vyasji experienced the splendor and joy of that reflection within himself. After giving him this boon, Sri Shiva removed himself from his sight. Ved Vyas returned to his ashram in perfect peace. Ved Vyasji's sojourn on the banks of river Saraswati. The rishis asked Sootji, after receiving the boon from Sri Shiva, what did that most eminent among sages, Ved Vyas, do? Please tell us in detail. Sootji says, many famous sages like Asit, Deval, and Vaishampayan came and studied under Ved Vyas. On completion of their spiritual education, they took his permission and went to different parts of the world for propagation of religious principles. After his son Sukhdev left for his heavenly abode, Vyasji decided to leave that place. Just at that time, he suddenly remembered his mother, Satyavati, who was a maiden of a non-Aryan tribe. He had parted from her on the banks of the river Ganga, and he recalled how sad and inconsolable she had been. So, he left the mountains and went down to the place of his birth. There, he inquired from her clansmen about his mother. They told that the pious and holy maiden Satyavati had been given in marriage to the famous and illustrious king Shantanu. The head boatman extended a respectful hospitality to Ved Vyasji. He left his birthplace and went and built an ashram on the banks of the Saraswati river. He spent his days in tapasya, renunciation and meditation. King Shantanu was an illustrious and dignified ruler. He and Satyavati begot 2 sons. Vyasji was happy to know that he had 2 brothers. The elder was Chitrangad. He was suppressor of enemies and was possessed of all great qualities. The second son, Vichitravirya, was illustrious and wise. Shantanu had an older son, Bhishma, of unequaled strength and valor. Satyavati's 2 sons, Chitrangad and Vichitravirya, were also mighty and brave. Seeing his 3 powerful and brave sons, Shantanu felt he was more invincible than the gods. Then Shantanu left for his heavenly abode. Just as one divests himself of old garments for new, so also King Shantanu discarded his old and worn-out mortal body. The prescribed ceremonies were performed. The eldest son, Prince Bhishma, declined the throne and coronated his brother Chitrangad as king. The new king was very brave and valiant and vanquished all his enemies in a short time. One day, King Chitrangad took a vast army and went to the forest. A Gandharva, celestial musician bearing the same name Chitrangad, saw the king and descended to earth and stood before the king. Both were very brave and strong. A great battle ensued on the battlefield called Kurukshetra. They fought fiercely for 3 years. At last, the king fell to the Gandharva. The new king Vichitravirya ascended the throne. He was just a youth. When he grew to manhood, Bhishma began to think of getting him married. The king of Kashi had 3 most beautiful daughters who were endowed with all favorable qualities. The king arranged a Swayamvara with a condition that the princesses would choose their husbands themselves. Thousands of kings and princes had been invited, and a very royal and respectable gathering was present. Most valiant Prince Bhishma arrived in a chariot, defeated all the kings and princes, and carried away the 3 princesses to Hastinapura. His feelings towards the princesses was pure, as if they were his sisters or daughters. On reaching Hastinapur, he presented the princesses to his mother, Queen Satyavati. Then he consulted learned priests and Brahmins and fixed an auspicious date for the marriage of the princesses to King Vichitravirya. One of the princesses, who was the most beautiful, said with great modesty to Bhishma, "O protector of the righteous, you are a dignitary of the Kaurava dynasty. O son of Ganga, please understand. I had already chosen King Shalv as my husband, and he also chose me in his heart to be his bride. You are the greatest among the holy and pious, and you are also strong and powerful. In the circumstances, do whatever you deem fit." Sootji says, hearing this, Bhishma asked for advice from Satyavati and the priests and ministers. Then he told the princess that she was free to go with her purity and chastity intact. She went to King Shalv and said, "King, in my heart I had chosen you as my husband, and I know you also chose me. I have come to you, and you may make arrangements for our marriage." King Shalv said, "O beautiful one, in my presence and in the presence of a large and noble gathering, Bhishma carried you and put you in his chariot and took you away. It is not possible for me to marry you. No sensible man will marry a maiden who has been abandoned by another. Even though Bhishma had pure intentions, the marriage cannot take place." After this rejection, the princess went back to Bhishma weeping and sorrowful. She pleaded, "O brave one, treating me as your castaway, King Shalv has refused to marry me. Now, you must keep me here as your servant, or I will have to release my soul from its body." Bhishma replied, "O princess, in your heart you have already accepted another as your husband, so who can accept you now? It is better for you to return to your father's house." The princess left and wandered into the forest. She found a quiet and peaceful place conducive to meditation and settled down there. King Vichitravirya lived happily with the 2 princesses, Ambalika and Ambika. Sometimes they stayed in the palace and sometimes they would go to the forest. In the 9th year, the king died of tuberculosis. Satyavati was plunged into grief. She went into solitude for some time. Then she called Bhishma and requested him to take charge of the kingdom and also ensure that the Yayati dynasty did not cease. Bhishma reminded his mother that to ensure his father's happiness, he had relinquished all claim to the throne and had also taken a vow not to marry. Sootji says, Satyavati was troubled with the problem that if there was no progeny, the line would cease to exist. Bhishma suggested to her that if the 2 queens produced heirs, the matter could be solved. Satyavati's thoughts turned to her son, the most pure Ved Vyas. As soon as she thought of him, he arrived in her presence. Bhishma received his brother with respect and reverence. Satyavati also honored him. The whole personality of Ved Vyas was glowing like flames from a fire. Satyavati addressed her son, "Most auspicious one, you must ensure the continuity of our line. You must produce heirs for the family of Vichitravirya." To Vyasji, his mother's words were his command. He agreed. Queen Ambika bore a child who was blind. He was called Dhritarashtra. Ambalika gave birth to a child with pale complexion. He was called Pandu, and by unanimous decision he became heir to the throne. Once again, Satyavati called Ved Vyas and made the same request to him. This time the queens did not go to Vyasji but sent a maid. The son born to the maid was a pious being, the embodiment of Dharma. He was called Vidur. In this way, in obedience to his mother, Ved Vyas ensured the continuity of the Yayati clan. I have narrated to you all the episodes connected with the Yayati clan. Chapter 1 completed. Srimad Devi Bhagavath. If you want to know who Adi Shakti is, read Devi Bhagavath, said by Her Holiness Srimataji Nirmala Devi.
The Holy Recital of Srimad Devi Bhagavath.
Jai Shri Mataji.